meeting. Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, and recordings can be found at Broomfield's website at broomfield.org/council meetings. Public comment is welcome in person or through our call-in service. Instructions for calling in are available on the council meetings webpage. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 participants have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1 minute to speak. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available through our AV team in the back of the council chambers. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, and other Native peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this land for generations and continue to maintain deep cultural and spiritual ties to it. As the city and county of Broomfield, we recognize the responsibility to honor this legacy and the enduring presence of Native communities. May this acknowledgement inspire action that fosters greater understanding, truth, and respect for Indigenous peoples. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. We'll plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We will begin with council's review and approval. But you know, the one thing I didn't have, and I'm going to back up, that we have a quorum. I skipped that. So the city council, there are all 10 council members in attendance. A quorum of the council is present. I skipped over that. So it's on the record now. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? No? Okay. Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. The first item under petitions and communications this evening is a proclamation declaring August 2025 as Broomfield Government Employees Appreciation Month. This is one of my favorite proclamations, as we are incredibly fortunate to have the amazing staff we have in Broomfield. We'd like to extend a special thank you to 2 of our longest standing team members who are here to accept the proclamation on behalf of all of the employees. We have Cheryl Allen, the office manager in the Office of the Chief of Police. She's been an integral part of Broomfield for over 32 years. Additionally, Police Sergeant Scott Swenson has dedicated over 29 years of service to the city and county of Broomfield. Ms. Allen and Sergeant Swenson, would you please come up to the podium? And I will summarize the proclamation. The strength of any community is rooted in the dedication of its people and the tireless efforts of its employees. In Broomfield, the high quality of life is a direct result of the hard work and deep commitment of local government employees. These individuals consistently demonstrate excellence through their dependability, initiative, innovation, and responsible use of resources. Every day, they take on a wide range of essential responsibilities, from ensuring public safety and clean water to supporting vulnerable residents and maintaining infrastructure. Their work also enriches the community through recreation programs, environmental efforts, arts and culture, educational opportunities. It's important to recognize and thank all Broomfield employees for their invaluable service, devotion, and long-lasting contributions to the community. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim 2025 as Broomfield Government Employees Appreciation Month. We are incredibly fortunate and want to express our sincere gratitude to you. Ms. Allen or Sergeant Swenson, would you like to make any remarks? There's no pressure.
Just on behalf of all employees, we thank you.
Swenson, you can pass.
Oh, just thank you. It's been a great place to work.
You're welcome. Thank you. And now we'll move on to public comments. We're doing this a little differently today, so bear with me to make it smoother. Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this item? Please come up to the podium. All right, then I'll go to questions or comments from council next. Any comments from council? I don't see any. Well, thank you again for your years of service and dedication to Broomfield and for joining us this evening to celebrate. And thank you to all of our employees. I'm going to present this proclamation.
These are two of our least. These are two of our least chatty.
We don't want to embarrass you or make you uncomfortable. You are free.
We sure
go.
are grateful.
Thank you. Next, we have a proclamation declaring August 17th, 2025 as National Nonprofit Day. Will the representatives here to accept the proclamation please come on up to the podium? And thank you for joining us this evening. I'll now summarize the proclamation. Local community organizations in Broomfield provide essential health, human, cultural, scientific, and artistic services that greatly benefit our residents. Each year, many of these organizations apply for grant funding from the City and County of Broomfield to continue offering programs that support the health, safety, and overall well-being of the community. Nonprofits play a vital role in meeting critical community needs, including support for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, mental health care, emergency assistance, and cultural and educational programs, making Broomfield a more diverse, safe, and welcoming place. The City and County partners with and funds numerous organizations such as A&I Avenues, Clinica Family Health and Wellness, Broomfield Fish, the Broomfield Community Foundation, and many other dedicated agencies whose tireless efforts are essential to the well-being of our residents. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim August 17th, 2025 as National Nonprofit Day in Broomfield and urge all residents to recognize and support the contributions of nonprofit organizations and their dedicated staff and volunteers who are essential partners in building a stronger, healthier, and more vibrant community for all. Would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm Mandy Walk. I am the Nonprofit and Community Engagement Manager for the Department of Human Services. I'm here on behalf of the department to honor and thank our incredible nonprofit partners, organizations that play a vital role in supporting the well-being of our community. Our nonprofit partners are at the heart of community impact in Broomfield. Their trauma-informed wraparound services, from housing and food access to mental health and youth support, are essential to meeting people where they are and helping them thrive. None of this would be possible without strong partnerships. We're proud to support these organizations through the Department of Human Services Nonprofit Grants Program that funded 47 nonprofit organizations in 2025, totaling over $1.8 million with collaboration from the Broomfield Community Foundation, who's here with us tonight. However, the real story is the incredible difference our communities nonprofits make every day. We're honored to walk alongside them as core partners in building a stronger, more connected community. Every day, these nonprofits meet urgent needs, whether it's food, housing, mental health support, advocacy, or youth programs. They're often the first call when a resident is facing a crisis, and they stay connected long after, helping people rebuild and thrive. Our shared work is grounded in compassion, equity, and service. Together, we make sure Broomfield families are seen, supported, and never alone. These organizations are not just service providers, they are trusted partners, tireless advocates, and innovators who respond to challenges with care and creativity. If you could go to the next slide, please. We in Human Services are grateful for their partnership and proud to stand alongside them. Tonight's Nonprofit Day proclamation is a way to publicly say, we see you, we appreciate you, and Broomfield is stronger because of you. Thank you to every nonprofit staff member, volunteer, and leader who helps make our city a place of dignity and opportunity for all. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce two of our partners. The Broomfield Community Foundation is a key partner in administering nonprofit grant funds and leading the Broomfield Community Services Network. They play a critical role in supporting our nonprofit infrastructure, building capacity, and coordinating volunteers and donors to support causes across our community. And Deanne West is here with us tonight. She's the executive director, and you can move to the next slide, please.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. Thank you for this opportunity. Again, I'm Deanne West. I'm the Executive Director of the Broomfield Community Foundation. Our mission is simple. We're here to improve the lives of every Broomfield citizen, and we do that through a number of programs. We provide trusted local platform for philanthropy, and we try and connect community members and donors' financial gifts to support local nonprofits. We steward a wide range of funds, including donor advised funds, scholarships, field of interest funds, and more. We champion collaboration, bringing together nonprofits, civic leaders, community members to address shared challenges. We do this through the BCSN network, which Mandy mentioned. We have over 85 organizations as a part of BCSN, and all of them serve Broomfield residents. We provide monthly meetings, trainings, additional support, collaboration. We're here to support them in any way we can. Since our inception, or at least since last year, at the end of last year, we've granted out a total of $6.5 million. And if I include year-to-date numbers, we're at around 7.6. We hold a number of scholarships, but our grant programs really are the foundation of our efforts. We have our Human Services Network, which supports human services education and seniors, and that is through the collaboration with DHS, which we are super grateful for. We also have Arts and Civic grant cycle along with youth opportunity scholarships. Again, we're grateful to DHS for all they're doing in helping us support the nonprofits today and for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deanne. And we'd also like to recognize, you can go on to the next slide, Clinica Family Health and Wellness. Jen Leos is here with us. And they were formed in 2024 through a merger of Mental Health Partners and Clinica Family Health Services. They provide integrated physical and behavioral health services and are a lifeline for many in our community, especially those who are low income or uninsured. So you can come on up.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Leos, former co-CEO of Mental Health Partners and currently serving as a Chief Integrated Health Officer for Clinica Family Health and Wellness. And I'm honored to be representing our organization, which is just one of the many nonprofit organizations that help to support the Broomfield community. The recent merger of Mental Health Partners and Clinica Family Health was rooted in the vision of providing culturally integrated whole person care, serving Adams, Boulder, Broomfield, Gilpin counties across 14 locations. We have the privilege of reducing barriers to help our community in receiving comprehensive services to improve health outcomes. I'd like to share one experience from one of our clients. Excuse me, this is a client quote. "You have all provided me with the physical and mental health support in moments of crisis, anxiety, fear, anger, depression, suicidal thoughts, lows and highs, positives, happy moments, and proud moments. You all have provided me resources, guided me to resources in my community, and taught me how to cope on my own with these resources, but also with the positive support system by my side that is always there when needed." And this is why many of us as nonprofits do what we do, to have that impact on the community. Thank you, Mayor, council members, city and county staff, and community members for this acknowledgement. Thank you for your continued partnership and collaboration. And thank you for all you do to support the work that we as nonprofits in the community do each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you all. We really appreciate you. We'll now move to public comments. If anyone would like to speak on this item, now is the time. Anyone online? All right. And any comments or questions from council? Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. Ms. Walker, Ms. West, and our health and our Department of DHS. We are, I feel like I'm really loud up here, sorry. We are so excited that you all are here. And there's a key thing that happened this week at our friends fundraiser on Sunday that I thought was really key. We had quite a few friends, I would say, I don't know, fashion show artists that really wanted to expressed that their biggest dream is to live in the Grove. And I thought that that was really cool. And one of them asked to not only walk with one of our nonprofit partners, BHA, but also our city and county manager. And it's just really a testament to show how much our city works with our nonprofits to let our residents live out their biggest and wildest dreams. It was just a testament and physical view as to how we work with our nonprofits. And we just really appreciate what our nonprofits do. We know that the times are going to be rough, and they already are. We've seen defunding of a lot of nonprofits from federal funding. And also it's going to come down the pike with state funding. So I feel like there's just been a lot of support needed for our nonprofits. And I just wanted to thank you all for all of your work. And Mandy, you just do such a wonderful job. I know I work closely with you on some other grant processes and federal processes for keeping our seniors in their homes. And that's also vital as well. So if anyone does not donate to a nonprofit, please start doing it. They are under duress and they need your help. And not only your money, but they need your volunteer support and your voice too. So if they have a fundraiser coming up, please share it and invite people intentionally, text them, email them, call them. They really need your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Witten.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo Councilmember Henkel's sentiments. We really appreciate the work you've done. And I think it's important to recognize nonprofits in our community. A lot of people talk to me about how many nonprofits are in Broomfield and the fact that we give a lot of services to people not even within Broomfield itself. And so I'm proud that you guys are being recognized. We really appreciate the work you do, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is going to be, I expect that there's going to be more need in the next few years as we see potential turbulence in the economy, people losing social services. So I want to take this moment and say thank you. So appreciate the work you're doing.
Right, thank you. Any other council comments? Right, well, I'm going to present this proclamation, and then we're going to all join in for a photo in front. Thank you all for indulging us. And the final item under petitions and communications this evening is a proclamation declaring August 25th through 29th as Smart Week in Broomfield. Will the representatives here to accept the proclamation please come up to the podium? Thank you for joining us this evening. I'll now summarize the proclamation. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for children and teens in the U.S., and the city and county of Broomfield is committed to ensuring a safe environment for all children. Each day, preventable tragedies occur when children access unsecured firearms. Research shows that storing guns unloaded, locked, and separate from ammunition is the most effective way to prevent access. Despite this, many firearms remain unsecured in homes, putting millions of children at risk. Improper storage can lead to accidental shootings or firearms being stolen and used in crimes. Broomfield recognizes its responsibility to protect public safety and supports the efforts of schools, hospitals, agencies, and organizations working to prevent gun-related injuries and deaths. The city and county of Broomfield commends the Be Smart program and supports Smart Week as a vital initiative to raise awareness and promote secure gun storage. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim August 25th through 29th, 2025 as Smart Week in Broomfield. Ms. O'Brien, would you like to make any remarks?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor Castriota. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members for your continued support and leadership and for acknowledging Smart Week here in Broomfield. Again, my name is Leslie O'Brien and I'm the state Be Smart lead here in Colorado. There was a recent article just published. According to a new study by researchers at the Colorado School of Public Health, nearly 1/3 of kids in Colorado say they could access a loaded firearm without adults' permission. That's a big number of kids in our state. And so I think that that's, I guess, reinvigorates me to continue to spread this message and this really common sense. I mean, it's just common sense. So I guess this is why proclamations like this are so important. For those who are not aware, the SMART acronym stands for securing guns in all your guns in your homes and vehicles, asking about the presence, oh my gosh, I skipped the M, modeling responsible behavior around guns, asking about unsecured guns in other people's homes, recognizing the role of guns in suicide, and also telling others how to be smart. And that's what we're doing. So I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. We do allow public comment on this item, so if anyone would like to speak on it, now's the time. Then I'll move on to council. Any comments from council? Councilmember Henkel.
Real quick, thank you, Ms. O'Brien, for being here. And I know that you are busy. Kids have started school today and it's been a wild day already. And you and your team have just been really for gun safety and for firearm safety. And at every turn, you're always asking, how can we help keep kids safe, not only at school, but also in their homes and in other people's homes? It's an awkward question to ask. But as gun owners, we all know if you've been trained, you need to have them locked up. So it should be common sense for everyone who owns a gun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, well, I really appreciate you bringing awareness to this, and I'm going to present the proclamation. I can move. Thank you. Although that's the only thing. That's the one thing. It's a new situation. We'll tweak it. All right, moving on. Does any member of the council have any updates or reports this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So this last Thursday and Friday, myself and Councilmember Lim, we attended the CCAT Summer Retreat, the Counties and Commissioners Acting Together. This is one of our appointed duties on council. One of the things that we heard about was regarding the special session for the state legislature that will be taking place on August 21st at 10 a.m. They have talked about a minimum of 3 days. It's most likely to go a little bit longer than that. They are looking to address the $800 million loss in revenue in this current fiscal year. This is due to the HR 1 that was passed at the federal level. There are going to be changes looking to changes to the health insurance affordability enterprise. Because there are going to be massive increases for health insurance around the state. Looking to address providers being banned from Medicaid financing, looking at SNAP and shoring that up as well. And then, of course, the big one that's been talked a lot about is changes to Senate Bill 24-205, which is the artificial intelligence bill that was passed this last legislative session, which the governor has talked a lot about and needed changes to make to that during the special session. So in addition to that, we talked about previewing the general legislative session for this next year. Of course, there is going to be more cuts that are going to be coming during that session, probably a minimum of $700 million during that session. There was talk about changes to housing, especially with the Prop 123, as well as YIGBY. Of course, there's going to be a lot of conversation around insurance, health insurance, and reinsurance for properties. So those are kind of some of the conversations that we had at CCAT this last week. That's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up. I filed my report if anyone in the public ever wants to read about what is entailed with all our travel and training budget. Our reports are posted on a web page at the city. But I just wanted to highlight one other thing in particular, just to give you an idea of how some of these federal legislative HR 1 cuts will impact Broomfield. Broomfield's focus has been on protecting current funding and minimizing future cuts and unfunded mandates. Although it has been stated by Governor Polis that there will be no further cost shifting to the counties during the special session, there is reason for skepticism based on past practice. And we who attended the CCAT summer retreat had the opportunity to remind several of our invited guests, including Speaker Julie McCluskey, Joint Budget Committee Chair Senator Jeff Bridges, and Senator Dylan Roberts, that these unintended consequences for counties are central to our concern. Certainly in 2026, HR 1 will require greater county administrative expense, when counties will have to check Medicaid recipients' work requirements every 6 months instead of annually. There will be pressure on Broomfield HHS staff, since federal reimbursement rates for Medicaid will depend on lowering error rates in processing Medicaid applications. That's just one example of what we talked about would be the impact on counties in the future. I also attended the Chamber's coffee with a council member this morning. And we spoke, we handled questions on Broomfield Town Square, Flatiron, housing, income-aligned housing, and other issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the NALEO 42nd conference. NALEO stands for the National Association of Elected and Appointed Latino Officials. That was in Georgia, and I will have a robust report about that soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to chair the Front Range District for the Colorado Counties Incorporated. And what that means is that we have a lot of metro area county commissioners from Weld County, Denver, Boulder, and the surrounding metro area talking about the issues with our Colorado counties. A big part of that is talking about what were our big wins of the legislative session in 2025. And we do go down and talk about the bills for literally 2 long days every month, so Thursdays and Fridays. And we talk about the legislative bills on what we can agree on and what we don't agree on. And then additionally, we talked about potential bills that each county wants to see as far as bills run from CCI next year. The second thing that we had was a lunch from CSU Extension. We know that Broomfield really benefits from CSU Extension. If you don't know much about them, please Google them. They do an amazing job of doing outreach, from gardening to anything sustainability, and they just do such a great job. The last thing that we did was probably the most impactful that the county commissioners really enjoyed, and that was a 3-person panel discussion. And it was led by our BHA, our Broomfield Housing Alliance Director, Kristen Heiser. And she had 3 guest speakers. So Gabby Gonzalez, who has intellectual disabilities, a veteran named Steve, and an Afghan refugee named Dr. Mirwais Bahij. And they talked about how housing really has meant a lot to them and what it has done for them. And it really made an impact on a lot of our commissioners because they didn't realize how much of an impact it makes on your mental health as well, and how much of an impact it makes on finding a job. So if you have secure housing, you can actually find upskilling opportunities and certifications to make even more money and then possibly own a home. And so they spoke with our county commissioners, and then we had a tour of Academy Place Apartments that was on 120th, where Gabby gave us a tour of her apartment, and she was so excited. And then she's excited to move into the Grove, and wanted to thank County Commissioner and also City Council member Kenny Wen for attending in the morning as well, discussing the legislative actions. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member reports? Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we met, but on July 29th, I was honored to host the second annual Mayor's Business Forum at Viega to present an updated 2025 State of the City and County to our business leaders. I'm proud to share that Broomfield continues to build on a solid foundation, both economically and support our private sector success. It reinforces our shared vision for a thriving, resilient, and business environment. Broomfield's economic momentum continues to earn regional and national attention. In the last year alone, we were ranked #1 as the most livable community in Colorado and 6th in the nation. We were also named the 4th healthiest community. Most notably, Broomfield was named Large Community of the Year by the Economic Development Council of Colorado, a strong endorsement of our public-private partnerships and pro-business approach. Thank you. We'll now continue with public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items other than the ones already on our agenda. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please make your way to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hey, my name is Susan Hall, and I have lived in Ward 5 for over 40 years. My brother lives in that ward. My mother and my stepfather lived there for, I don't know how many years before that. So I am a longtime member of this community. But today I would like to talk to you about having a resolution that says that we will no longer give our money to a Holocaust and a genocide. And I was thinking, you know, some people don't like that term, but of those that I watch, many of them are colonels. Colonel Wilkerson, Colonel Douglas, Colonel McGregor, Scott Ritter, who was a weapons inspector, U.S. Air Force official, Karen Kowalski, Colonel Douglas, I think I said him, and Wilkerson, Colonel Estoy, Ambassador Freeman. All these people say that it is a genocide, and I do not know how we are going to live past this. Over 140 countries have said Palestine should have their own country, not be underneath another one, and we should not be supporting it. We are already $37 trillion in debt. Is that how we want to spend our money? I don't want to be known for that. I don't know if you do. The only countries that stand for us are 7. Papua New Guinea, Israel, Nauru, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, I already said, and Micronesia. That's almost none of the European countries. Even this week, Australia said no way. They were standing behind Palestine. So I would just like to see that you would say, we don't want to spend any more of our money on missiles. And as we've talked about here, weapons. Over 5,000 children under 5 years old have died from the weapons. That's before the starvation even started. They are not killing soldiers. They are killing civilians because they can't get to the soldiers. And every country and every peoples have a right to defend themselves. And so do the Palestinians. And in fact, Israel has had more hostages and had them much longer than the Palestinians would ever even be able to do. I would also like to say that if you're wondering why I come to the city council instead of to my congressmen and senators, It's because every one of them in Colorado is purchased by APAC. I guess I
Time
can't
has
show this up here,
Expired. Your
but I could read these off.
No, ma'am, your time has expired. You had
Okay.
3 minutes.
Well, every single one of them has APAC contributions and JPAC contributions, and they will not answer the questions when I follow them. I say, what do you think of Palestine? Oh, only Bennett says
All
maybe
right.
2
Thank
states.
you.
That's all they will say.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Please make your way to the podium. State your name and neighborhood for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, city staff. On a little bit lighter note, Broomfield had its National Night Out last week and it was fabulous. It was really nice. Probably the best weather we've had in a long time for it. The Flight for Life helicopter was able to actually stay for a little while. The canines were fantastic. So it was a really good night. So anybody gets a chance to go to that, it was really fun. Thank you.
Mr. Carruthers. Would anyone else like to be heard? And yes, we got really lucky with the weather this time. The last 2 years haven't been as kind, so it was well attended. All right, we'll now continue with the report section of the agenda. City Manager Hoffman, do you have any report?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. City and County Attorney Rogers.
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Council's consideration of the consent items is next. The clerk will read the consent items by title, and there will be 1 opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 6A through 6E by title?
6A, approval of minutes for the special council meeting of July 17th, 2025, and the regular city council meetings of July 22nd and August 4th, 2025. 6B, proposed resolution number 2025-121, authorizing the third amendment to the consulting agreement with Stanley Consultants, Inc. for the Industrial Lane Bikeway Phase 2 project. Proposed resolution number 2025-122, authorizing a construction agreement with HCG Construction LLC for the Industrial Lane Bikeway Phase 2 improvements. 6C, proposed resolution number 2025-119, authorizing a construction agreement with Denver Dirt Works, Inc. for parking lot improvements located at George DeCiero Building and Outlook Park. Proposed resolution number 2025-124, authorizing the second amendment to the consulting agreement with Kimley Horn for the parking lot repair and replacement citywide project. 6D, proposed resolution number 2025-120, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation for the Midway Boulevard pre-construction project. 6E, proposed resolution number 2025-108, approving a master license agreement with Light Gig Communications ND LLC.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comments on these items. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We'll start with in-person comments. So if there's anyone who'd like to be heard on the consent items, please come up to the podium. Anyone online? All right, thank you. Next is council questions and comments. Any questions from council? Councilmember Lim.
I have a brief question on 6B and 6D. On 6B, will there be another budget amendment that will deal with this increased design cost, or did we already cover that in an earlier budget amendment? And I didn't see an expected end date for construction, if you could tell us that. And on 6D, the Midway Boulevard Corridor Plan, it mentions engagement with the community. And I'd like to know if that will, what that will consist of. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Leadership, Brian Graham, Community Development. Regarding your question on 6B Industrial Lane Phase 2, as you can see in the funding table, we are projecting a balance of $840,000. That budget for the project was actually increased as part of 2025 Amendment 1 based on our 90% plans, which had projected cost over the previously approved budget. That budget amendment increased the project budget, and we spent this money on some redesign, some value engineering that actually showed its worth in terms of receiving bids under the budget. So now we're projecting quite a budget being under budget. As it relates to the construction timeline, that's something that's still being worked out with the contractor. I do anticipate that taking most all of next year, 2026.
Thank you. That all, Councilmember Wynn? Oh, sorry. Hey, Ms. Grant.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Sarah Grant, Transportation Manager. Council member, in regards to your question about item 6D and the public engagement for the Midway, we will be reinitiating the Broomfield Voice page and also reaching out to community members that live along the corridor of Midway as we reopen those concepts and further refine them into a final design plan.
Okay, great.
We'll be also using postcards and all of our typical methods of engagement for the community.
Okay, will you have any kind of booth or any feedback at Broomfield Days or anything like that?
Yes, we will make sure we have presence at all of our major events for the project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from council? None. Before asking for a motion, I want to remind everyone that item 6D contains an intergovernmental agreement which requires 2/3 approval of council. Is there a motion by council that consent items 6A through 6E be approved? Oh, on the left side, Councilmember Wynn.
I make this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Delgadillo.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. The first item under action items this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second reading of 6 proposed ordinances related to ballot questions to amend the Broomfield Charter. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize. Ms. Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Nancy Rogers, the City and County Attorney. We're here on second reading of 6 proposed charter amendments that would go to the voters at the November 2025 election. I know for some of you who have attended these meetings and for council, this might be repetitive, but I'd like to give a little bit of the background for the public that might be hearing this for the first time. Next slide. In 1974, Broomfield became a home rule city and the voters adopted a charter. In 2001, when Broomfield became a city and a county, there were some amendments to the charter, but not really a full review and revision to the charter. This council impaneled a charter review committee, and in 2023, the charter review committee met multiple times, long meetings, and made recommendations for proposed changes to the charter. In last year, council had approved 7 ballot question ordinances and voters approved 6 of those. Those amendments are now in our charter. For this group of amendments, we started this on June 17th with a study session to discuss possible 2025 ballot questions. The first reading was on July 8th, and this is our second reading tonight, and these would be at the election in November. Next slide. I want to be very clear for everybody that's watching and listening. There are no charter amendments that are approved tonight. This is entirely a voter decision. These are ordinances to put questions on the ballot. If approved, they're put on the ballot and the voters have the ultimate approval. Next slide. So we have 6 ordinances tonight. We have a general update, a ballot question on not holding dual offices, one on how we fill vacancies, another about a code of ethics, one on emergency ordinances, and one on IGAs. Next slide. Proposed ordinance 2276 is a general cleanup. As I mentioned, there were some changes to the charter after Broomfield became a city and county. This went through the entire charter and made sure we were clear that we are a city and a county everywhere that it mentions it. We changed municipal or to city or county or Broomfield when appropriate. We changed our municipal election to our coordinate election. Our clerk does a coordinate election because she is a city and a county clerk. We removed outdated language from the original 1974 charter. That this is not a substantive removal. These are provisions that talked about becoming a home rule city from a statutory city. We reference our constitutional amendment, which is the statewide constitutional amendment that voters from across the state approved that allowed Broomfield to become a city and county. And we added language that acknowledges council's ability as a county to perform those county functions. So again, this is a general update. Next slide. The proposed ballot question says without changing the substance, and then it goes through some of those key changes and updates that would be made to the charter. And then yes and no against. Next slide. The second proposed change to the charter would be a ballot question that would say an elected official cannot currently hold another publicly elected office. So again, we're not talking about your HOA office. We're talking about school board seat, special district seat, if we had a separate county government, a county commissioner seat. Right now, we don't have that prohibition, so it is possible that somebody could serve in another publicly elected office so long as they weren't incompatible. That would violate our ethics. And this would be the ballot question on the no dual office. Next slide. Proposed ordinance 2278 would be a change to the charter regarding vacancies. The timeframe to fill a vacancy, should there be one, would be 60 days instead of 30. 30 has proved a little tight for staff and actually for council and for the people applying for these open spots in the past. The person appointed to fill a vacancy seat would only serve until that next available coordinated election. And I want to use the time frame that we're at right now. If there was a vacancy right now, we would fill that vacancy, and that seat would be voted upon, if it wasn't already on the ballot, at the November election. If that vacancy occurred mid-October, ballots are out. It's too late to add another question. That person would actually serve until the November 26th. So it's a next available election. So it would be just a little bit longer. So and if there's any questions on that, I can clarify that a bit. Currently, a person who's appointed to fill a vacancy serves the entire term. So if a vacancy happens in the first 6 months, that person appointed by council to fill that vacancy is on there for the next 3.5 years. The mayor is a little different. Currently in our charter, the mayor vacancy in the mayor's office is filled by a special election unless that vacancy occurs within 4 months of the next election. The proposed change, and this came from our charter review committee, would be that the mayor pro tem would fill that vacancy, but that would only, again, be until the next election. So it's not the entire term of the mayor, it's just the next available election. So if we had a vacancy today in the mayor's office, that person would fill it until November of this year. First reading, council had approved an amendment. There was one more suggested change in the proposed ordinance that had to do with missing meetings. That was an amendment that was approved by council that is no longer in proposed ordinance 2278. Next slide. Thanks, James. There was a question, Councilmember Cohen had asked about the cost of special elections. Special elections can be very expensive. It's an election that's not planned. It's usually a one, maybe sometimes a 2-question election. For a special election for the entirety of Broomfield, that's $120,000 estimate. The costs actually don't change a lot when we only have a special election for a ward. I just wanted to show you those price points. The printing will change for the ballots, but generally we still need to hire election judges. We still need to feed them. We still need to plan for certain programming. But the big one here is the charter change would remove the special election for the mayor's office. That is a cost of $120,000 if we had to do a special election. Next slide. And this would be the proposed ballot question that would appear. Shall section 4.7 be amended? So individuals selected by council to fill a council member vacancy only serve until the next general or coordinated election. That addition of general or coordinated was added for clarification in an amendment on first reading, at which time the voters select who the representative will be. Mayor is similar. Mayoral vacancy would be filled with the mayor pro tem, but only until that next general or coordinated election, at which time the voters elect a mayor. Next slide. All right, proposed ordinance 2279 is a recommendation from the Charter Review Committee that there be a charter requirement that council adopt a code of ethics and maintain that code of ethics. To be clear, we have a code of ethics in our municipal code, but we have no requirement. So there's nothing that would stop a future council from maybe repealing that. This would require that council must always ensure that there's a code of ethics in our municipal code. Next slide. The proposed question has that mandate to have a code of ethics with the high points that the Charter Review Committee wanted to see: governing disclosure of conflicts, recusals from votings, and other standards of code of conduct or ethics. And this local ordinance would meet our requirements of the state constitutional amendment that mandates local bodies either have their own code of ethics or follow the state's code of ethics. Next slide. All right, proposed ordinance 2280 would address emergency ordinances. So emergency ordinances are done literally when there is a verifiable emergency. There has to be an immediate need for the preservation of public health, safety, or welfare, or peace. They can only be introduced by our unanimous -1 vote of council. So it's a higher standard to even talk about them. There's certain ordinances that can never be emergency ordinances. Taxes, debt, utility rates cannot be passed as an emergency ordinance. In the past, council has approved 4 emergency ordinances in the past 5 years. The most recent one that we did was on the fire code and for fire restrictions, and we did it as an emergency ordinance because we were in the high fire risk time. So next slide. The ballot question says, with no change to the high standards, specific reasons, or publication requirements. That's put in there to remind the voters that it still needs to be passed at a public meeting. It still needs to be passed by a majority of council. It still needs to be noticed to the public. This is not an ordinance that is passed in secret. It's just an ordinance that can be passed with 1 meeting instead of 2 meetings. Excuse me, sorry. It's always an ordinance that has 1 meeting, 2 meetings, but would go into effect immediately. So right now, emergency ordinances go into effect a week after they're passed. That was in the original charter, likely tied to the publications that we had in newspapers at the time. We know now that we can get the word out very, very quickly to our constituents through our social media channels, through our own website, through our own publications. So especially when we're talking about that fire emergency ordinance, it's really, we didn't need it that next day, but if we needed it that next day, we would have had it. Next slide. All right, the last ordinance is on intergovernmental agreements. Those are IGAs. The current charter has a requirement that IGAs are approved by 2/3 of council. We just had one in our consent agenda. This proposed ordinance would say that IGAs, like other contracts, could be approved by a majority vote of council. It would also formalize the ability of council to delegate signature authority. We do that already. Council has done that to our public health department and our human services department because they have a lot of intergovernmental agreements, a lot of intergovernmental grants. And then it would recommend that IGAs be published on the Broomfield website when practical and feasible to make it even easier for the members of the public to obtain those. Right now, they could obtain them through a records request. Next slide. Councilmember Hinkle had asked about the threshold for some of our neighboring communities and our partners in the region. So It's interesting when I did look into this question, and charters from other jurisdictions don't have consistent standards on IGAs. Like in the Arvada charter, it has to be approved by council, but there's not a higher vote threshold required. Same with Thornton. And in some of our neighbors' charters, there's no mention of IGAs in their charter and no different standard for approving IGAs. For our statutory communities, there's no provision on a specific threshold for approval. So we could potentially have an IGA, let's say with Boulder, and Boulder passes it by majority vote. Broomfield passes it by 2/3. Other things that we looked into, the 2/3 threshold is not tied to a dollar amount. As council is aware, the city manager has authority for contracts under 200,000. We bring you contracts above 200,000. IGA, if we have an IGA valued at 5,000, that would be coming to council under our current charter. So it's not tied to a dollar amount. Bond ordinances are separate. They are always need to be approved by 2/3 vote. There's a couple other things that this wouldn't change. Vetoes can only be overridden by 2/3 vote, is another example of where we have 2/3 in our code. So if council was to pass an ordinance and wanted a higher standard related to what might come after that ordinance, you could say, and when council votes on X matter, we require a 2/3 vote. So this wouldn't change council's ability to impose that higher threshold on themselves if they want to. Next slide. And this would be that proposed charter amendment ballot question. Next slide. Some of the feedback we got last year was there was a need for a blue book or an explanation document provided. So we have actually started working on an explanation document that would be set up similarly to the state's document, a pro, a con, cost, and plain language explaining the ballot question. We would also use this as a resource for our election judges and make sure it's printed out for them. I've already talked to the clerk about getting a half hour during the election judges training so that they know either how to respond to a question or where to refer that person for more information. This will be for cost. This will be on our website. We'll also utilize some of our social media channels, but we will have some of the resources printed out, but we don't expect this to be a very expensive printing cost. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. We'll now proceed with public comments on this item. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We'll start with in-person comments. So if you'd like to be heard, make your way down to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Charles Lobero, Brandywine. Thank you for addressing some of my concerns in a prior meeting in your comments and your reviews. Regarding the publication Blue Book, I think I had mentioned one of the things as I've been an election judge in other cities, as well as in my old time back in Colorado some decades ago. One of the things that I suggested is that in addition to any public presentation, email versions or whatever, that you post those at the actual ballot locations on a platform. So therefore, they can read the proposed amendments directly without interfering or delaying the access for others in the polls. So it's a suggestion. I think we've used it. It takes a little bit of a 4-foot printer, but I believe you have those. But I think the access of the people that may not have full access to computer access vis-a-vis some individuals within the community. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kim Tui Cindy Pansai, The Outlook. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. And I just wanted to say thank you for the Blue Book idea. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. Is everybody going to get mailed a Blue Book, or it's going to just be electronic? And if it's just electronic, will that information come with the ballot or could Blue Books not only be at the election sites, but also possibly in the library or maybe have a few copies, at the rec centers or something like that? Just, scatter them around so people are aware that this resource is out there. So and one more comment is the dual role for council not being allowed, dual elected office. It specifically says 2. Do we need to guard against people who said, well, I'll just go for 3?
Thank you. We will address that. And Ms. Rogers, would you be able to respond to the questions about the Blue Book too?
Thank you, Mayor. For cost reasons, we did decide not to have a mailed Blue Book. But I do think we can, as I mentioned, we were going to come up with a printed version for our election judges to have available at the GDC and our front desk here. I like the idea of the library, the rec center. We can make resources available and do our best to get the word out where people can get printed information if they need it, so that it's not only an electronic version. So I think that's a good suggestion. And then we'll see how this goes. As council knows, this is a long process. There were other recommendations that we have not addressed yet. So I do think we'll have future charter ballot questions, and maybe we do see that a printed mailed Blue Book in the traditional sense is what our community is really crying for. But we'll make sure to monitor that this year. That's great. That's a great suggestion. Let me check on the dual. Ooh. Yeah.
I see Ms. Gilbert coming up to the podium to join you.
Thank you. Do you have the question in front of you? I'm thinking it might be in the text of the question. Oh, great. Yeah, you cannot, and no, the change, well, let me look at the ballot question. So the actual change to the charter would say, no elected official of the city and county shall concurrently hold any other publicly elected office. So it does address that person for good or bad that would want to hold more than one. But now just looking at the question, the question, it would be, James, can you put back up ordinance 2277? The question does say, shall 4.6 of the charter be amended to provide that elected official cannot concurrently hold 2 public elected offices. So we do have the number 2 in there. The actual ordinance change says you just can't hold another public office at the same time. Multiple. More than one. There are options if we want, if council does think there's some confusion there.
I guess just to be sure, because we know from experience that squishy language can be exploited. An official cannot hold another publicly elected office. Change it from 2 to cannot concurrently hold another publicly elected office. I'm just putting it out there. You don't have to. I got a thumbs up.
I will take ownership of this. This is actually, that's poor word choice, because as Pat Gilbert pointed out, the actual charter amendment is clear that you cannot hold another publicly elected office. So another or more than one, I think, is a Scrivener's error, unless a member of council disagrees, and we can go through the formal amendment process.
I think it qualifies as a Scrivener's error. Clarification. We're not changing the content. We're changing the clarity. The intent's still there.
So I feel like we should get a yay or nay from the crowd. What do you all think? A provision that an elected official cannot concurrently hold another publicly elected office? No? Feeling good? Feeling good? Any other, an elected official cannot currently hold any other publicly elected office.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's better. Everybody says,
See,
okay.
wording's hard when you start to draft it, right? Any other? Any other publicly elected office?
Let
Okay.
me go, let me ask our colleagues up
Yes.
here. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a point of clarification, I feel like this should be happening during the discussion period when we introduce amendments and not currently while we're doing, like right now, just in terms of Robert's Rules of Order.
There's amendments?
Well, if this is what we're going to be changing, we have to amend.
Not if it's a scrivener's error, then
Okay.
it can be amended by the attorney's office.
I do believe this was error on my part in using the word "to" when clearly
Okay.
the intent of the ordinance was any other, more than one.
Okay. I just feel like
Yeah.
it's weird. that
But
we're doing
I
this
do
right
think,
now.
council member, it is very odd, and I am more than happy to go through the formal amendment process.
Okay. I mean, it's fine. I was just curious why we were doing it now instead of just kind of hashing
We
it
were
out while we were.
freestyling. I know, it wasn't Robert's
Well,
rules,
I
okay?
was
And
just-
I
It's a
was
good
just
point. We can wait
confused,
till we
so
get
that's
to the
fine.
discussion of 2277.
Okay, we'll table this and discuss it again. Sound good? And continue with any other public comments if there, we didn't really wrap that up. So, and would anyone else like to be heard on these items before we move on? All right, not seeing any. Anyone online? All right, well, now we'll go to questions and comments from council. Well, it does say you should limit yourselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, quick clarification, then a question, I promise. But just for those who may be listening this time and not last time and wondering why we cut out the 50% attendance rule, is that we couldn't come to agreement on what counted as an absence and how to count that and make sure it wasn't abused. So I assume we'll make another run at that at another time. Question, I'm just curious, since this never occurred to me, the 2 versus 3, but is there any other elected office that allows people to serve in dual offices? I mean, can you serve in the legislature, or is that prevented by the legislative rules? I think they can serve as
Rogers?
water commissioner or something like that, but I think that's happened.
You, I'll start at the city level. Other cities allow, they don't have a prohibition. Arvada does. That's one of our neighbors that does have a prohibition that says you cannot hold another elected office. So it depends on each city. On the state level, I actually don't believe that the state has a prohibition. You just get into the ethics of an incompatible office. So you wouldn't be able to hold an office in the governor's, on the governor's cabinet and also be a legislature, because those would be incompatible.
But the state legislature doesn't prevent them from also serving as a county commissioner or a township trustee or something like that.
I would have to check on that
Okay.
for, on the state
Just
side.
curious whether we're making a prohibition that's not possible to do anyway, because the school board doesn't allow you to serve anywhere else either. So,
I know that
that's
on
it.
the city level, it's dependent on each community.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lynn.
Yes, I think it's a good idea to have the printed copies for greater accessibility for those who don't have electronic access. What I'm concerned about is if we have printed copies at the library that somebody can use, or the rec center, and they put it back, do we need to be concerned about monitoring that someone writes something in that printed copy and then it gets passed on to someone else with comments about positions on such a measure? And I'm just thinking, do we need to then, like, I don't know, put a disclaimer on it that says, any extraneous markings are not part of the book, or I don't know. It's just a thought.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Lemon, that thought. I mean, that probably is a possibility. So I'd work with the staffs to say, keep an eye on these. If you start seeing people, add stickers to each one, they go through them really quick and put a sticker. We need to remove those. we have a very strict rule that the city and county of Broomfield cannot advocate or oppose any ballot measure. This needs to be a very neutral document. So that actually compromises the document for us. So it would be training that we would do for those staff at this desk, at those desks, to make sure they're keeping an eye on that and making sure that they don't get tampered with in any way, so that they can still be a neutral document.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Councilmember Cohen's question, there was a Boulder council member just a few years ago who was appointed to fill a seat in the legislature who did not resign their council seat and concurrently served until the end of that council term in both the legislature and the Boulder Council. So the Charter Review Committee knew that, and that was one of the discussion points on this point. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Shah.
Thank you, Mayor. So looking at ordinance number 2279, one of the bullets of the resolution, the ordinance is, it is council's intent that the number for the Broomfield ballot questions be as low as possible. So I'm curious with this one, because the ordinance talks about that council must have a code of ethics, establish a code of ethics. Is there any if council were to pass an ordinance of a code of ethics, or saying basically the same thing, that council should by a certain date establish a code of ethics, but just as an ordinance as opposed to putting forth a ballot change in a charter, would that be binding on council too if that was an ordinance that called for council to establish a code of ethics by, say, March 2026?
Thank you for that question, Mayor Pro Tem. If it's an ordinance in code, it can always be changed by a future council. So yes, council could put this mandate directly in the code. Council shall revisit this code of ethics every 5 years. Council shall do this. A future council could repeal that in its entirety and not have it in code.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? All right, there being no further questions. Oh, Councilmember Henkel.
Cheetos on my fingers. Nancy, would you tell me, just for clarity's sake, on when we do consent items, what requires a 2/3 vote on consent?
When we have an IGA on consent, we always make sure that the threshold vote for the entire consent agenda meets that 2/3. If it didn't, we would probably separate out each item and do a separate vote on each consent item. But that's the only thing on our consent that requires a 2/3 vote.
That's the only thing. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Well, don't we also require a 2/3 vote?
Oh, exec
for taking
sessions.
a position, for exec sessions,
Exec session
and for
and
taking an
taking-
official position on legislation? That's also
Yes.
a higher threshold.
Okay, yeah, I should have clarified as far as like not just consent. I should have clarified other items. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mayor.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, next is council's, there being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2276. And that is the general update and language revisions for those who don't have it in front of them. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title? Oh, they're up there now. Good.
Ordinance number 2276, submitting to a vote of Broomfield registered electors at the November 5th, 2025 coordinated election, a proposed amendment to the Broomfield Charter to remove outdated provisions and update language.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Leslie?
Move the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further, Councilmember Henkel.
I was a little bit quicker this time. Thank you. Just real quickly, I'll probably be voting no on both the Code of Ethics and the intergovernmental agreements. It's just for me, for a stickler, Code of Ethics, I don't feel like we need to put that to the ballot. I feel like we could do that on our own. And then the last one, the intergovernmental agreements, I just have this, maybe I'm this weirdo on council that wants to have, if we have 2/3 vote on, stances on legislation, if we have 2/3 vote on whether or not we want to engage legally and have some sort of executive session, then we should have 2/3 vote, I feel, to represent all of Broomfield in any IGA or intergovernmental agreement. And while others may not have that, I feel like they should. So maybe Broomfield could lead in this effort. But I feel like if it's going to really represent Broomfield in an intergovernmental agreement, I feel like we do need 2/3 vote on that. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Before we vote, I think we need to finalize that Scrivener's error 2277. We never actually finalized that conversation of what we're putting there. Or are we good with that?
No, we're gonna have discussion. Each one's a separate
Oh, we're having
question.
each- oh, sorry,
So
okay.
it's okay. We're gonna
Perfect.
have that discussion in the next one.
Okay, perfect. I'm good then. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2276. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That one passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2277. And this is the one with the council qualifications, no dual office. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2277, submitting to a vote of the registered electors of the city and county of Broomfield at the coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025. A proposed amendment to section 4.6 of the Broomfield Charter, qualifications of elected officials.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Marshall Holcomb.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Anderson. I'll let you kick it off. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Ward hit it first.
Go ahead.
Okay, you go first. You go second.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to, we're doing discussion, right? Not
Yeah,
questions.
we're in discussion.
Okay. I do want to propose an amendment to ordinance number 2277, proposed charter amendment number 1B, to state shall section 4.6 of the Broomfield Home Rule Charter be amended to provide that a Broomfield elected official cannot concurrently hold 2 or more publicly elected offices.
So we're adding
And
more.
that we
Okay.
suspend our rules. This is just in case, but we
Okay.
suspend our rules requiring a 3rd reading. Because we're doing an amendment for the 2nd
Because of the
reading, and that's what we have in our rules currently. So just adding that in there.
All right. So Councilmember Ward has proposed an amendment to 2277 to clarify the language to 2 or more. I don't know if you want to put that on the screen as it was, so people can follow along. And then is there a second? Councilmember Cohen. Thank you. Are you typing a real-time update?
Yeah.
Of course you are. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Just to make sure everybody sees it that's at home or watching on a screen. So since we have a motion and a second, I can go into discussion while you're working on that. Or is that
And-
okay?
And there was. And Councilman, we do have an amendment on second reading that hasn't been introduced, so it has a 2/3 for introduction threshold.
Got
So you
it.
might want to get, we can just take care of that right now.
Take care of that right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second, but we do still have discussion on it.
And you still have discussion. So
Okay.
this would be all those in favor of considering this amendment.
Before discussion?
Before discussion, just to introduce it.
Oh, that's right.
Because it's a
Okay,
late
thank
amendment.
you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and vote on whether to introduce this amendment since it's not last minute, but you know what I mean, not in advance. So go ahead and cast your vote if you're in favor of allowing this amendment to be introduced. I think I got that right. Like everybody's entered their vote and the results will be displayed. That does pass the threshold. So we're going to officially introduce your amendment, Councilmember Ward. And now we'll go to discussion on the amendment.
And James, it's slide 7 of the slide deck I just linked to you, not the PDF.
Councilmember Marshall, you were first.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for my for Attorney Rogers, our rule, the third reading rule only applies to substantive amendments, correct?
Yes.
And would this be considered a substantive amendment?
Councilmember Marshall, I don't believe it is because the intent in the memo, the intent in the ordinance makes it clear that it's no more than one office. So I would not say this is substantive.
Oh, so it wouldn't require us.
It does not
So-
require a third reading.
Right.
And our rule allows that determination to be mine.
Oh.
I did
No,
not write.
I thank you, Ms.
That's
Rogers.
it. Thank you.
So do we need Councilmember Ward to amend his amendment? Or does it just,
No.
Okay.
So for the public that's watching, council has a rule in their council rules that says if an ordinance is substantively amended on second reading, we must publish it again. We must come back for a third reading. There was feedback from constituents that you could turn something on its head on second reading. The public would never have a chance to make public comment on that. So I do not think that's necessary in this situation.
all right, thank you. Any other discussion or is that all you had, Councilmember Marshall? Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, this is just a friendly amendment, but the actual wording is shall currently hold any other publicly elected office. So I would just say, why are we, I don't know, I was saying two or more to say any other and follow the exact language of the text that we're proposing to change.
I might have heard that wrong. I thought I heard Councilmember Ward say two or more.
Yeah, and the actual language, if we make that change, is concurrently hold any other publicly elected office.
Oh, in the ordinance. I see
Mhm.
what you're saying, Councilmember Anderson.
So I mean, just for consistency, I would just say any other if
Friendly
we're good
amendment.
with that.
Councilmember Ward is fine with that. Councilmember Anderson, so
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson.
we can add that friendly amendment into his amendment. Or do we have to vote on it again?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Okay, so the wording
Here we go. You
is
can-
getting changed.
Okay, it's changed.
They both work for me, but I get consistency. Hold any other publicly elected office.
Yeah, if you refresh names, it should show up.
Refresh. I appreciate you making this in real time.
Kim, I appreciate you pointing this out. This would have been, we would have gotten
Yeah.
questions about
That was
it when we created the blue book, and I would have been just kicking myself and come like late October.
All right. This is our new language. Everybody can see it. The Broomfield Home Rule Charter will be amended to provide that a Broomfield elected official cannot concurrently hold any other publicly elected office. So now we're going to vote on this amendment unless there's any other discussion. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead. You got this, Michelle? Okay, that's okay. We're doing a lot of extra voting on this one. No, not yet. We're voting. The first vote was to introduce. This one's going to be to approve the amendment, and then we'll vote on the ordinance as amended. Lots of voting.
Lots of voting.
Extra.
Lots of button pushing.
Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So just because it's been read a couple different times incorrectly, it's offices on that last one. Do we need the S on there or can we remove it?
Grammar would say to remove it with an any. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for removing it. That would be my friendly amendment to the friendly amendment.
All right. And we're good. Anyone else? All right, so then we're going to go ahead and cast our vote on the amendment on the screen. Council members, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all. Yes, now we're going to go on to the vote on ordinance 227 as amended. Do we need to discuss? No, we discussed enough? Okay. So will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title? We did that. Now I'm on the next one, sorry.
Ordinance as amended.
Yes. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2278 as amended. 2277, I scrolled too far. I'm sorry, y'all. You got that? Okay. See no further discussion. We'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 227 as amended. Council, please cast your vote electronically. And they did. All council members, while I'm figuring out the script, that passes unanimously. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Ms. Rogers, for all your work to get that right. And our audience. So next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2278. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2278, submitting to a vote of the registered electors of the city and county of Broomfield at the coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025. A proposed amendment to the section 4.7 of the Broomfield Charter regarding vacancies.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Wynn?
I make this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I totally get why we would want to fill council and mayor vacancies in this respect. The piece that I have an issue with is around the general elections. I could see why filling a mayoral vacancy at a general election is probably needed. But to fill a council member, one ward council member by general election just seems to be a lot. So I have an issue with that part of this ordinance. So I believe I will be voting no on this.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ward?
Thank you, Mayor. I was the one that had brought forward this amendment to require all elected officials to be filled, their vacancies to be filled at the next available election, whether that be a general election or a coordinated election. And I thought that was important because for me personally, and I hope for all of us, the people are the ones that consent to be governed, and they should be the ones that have the right to pick who is going to be governing them. And while 2 years, up to potentially 2 years might seem, minuscule for us, I think extending that time is a disservice to our residents and denying them their ability to voice their opinion on who represents them. So I think to Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf's issues, I think I encourage you to change your mind on how you want to vote with this, because I think it is important that we provide the residents with the ability to pick their representatives at the earliest convenience possible.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Being no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2278. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 9-1. Thank you all. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2279. And that is the Code of Ethics. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2279, submitting to a vote of the registered electors of the city and county of Broomfield at the coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025. A proposed amendment to the Broomfield Charter that would require council to adopt a code of ethics.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Anderson.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? I got three over here. We'll go with Councilmember Marsh Holston.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So as my question alluded, when looking at council's intent to limit the number of Broomfield ballot questions to be as low as possible on this upcoming ballot, this is one in which I don't think that we need to put this towards to the voters. I believe that we could create an ordinance that requires council to establish a code of ethics by a certain date. So I would like to move that direction as opposed to putting this question to the voters. Thanks.
Thank you. Any
Mayor?
other discussion?
Mayor, can I offer a clarification point?
Yes,
And
Ms.
I
Rogerson.
support Mayor Pro Tem's view that it can be a goal of council to reduce the number of ballot questions. That part of the ordinance, I want to explain what that means. In the, it's the actual number. So 1A, 1283. So last year we got into trouble because in the ordinance, we assigned them numbers and it messed up the numbering at the end. So I just wanted to clarify that that reference of low numbers actually means the ballot number as it's gonna, so when people start campaigning for ballot question 1A, that might mean a different 1A if only 4 of the questions pass. So I just wanted to clarify that, but I do understand what you're saying, that there could be a goal of council to just reduce overall the number of questions and not put 6 to the ballot, to the voters.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2279. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 8-2. Thank you very much. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2280. That is the emergency ordinance. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2280, submitting to a vote of the registered electors of the city and county of Broomfield at the coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025. A proposed amendment to section 6.8 of the Broomfield Charter that would make emergency ordinances effective immediately.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I was just signaling to move the item.
Oh,
Sorry.
I didn't realize that. I've never used that, so my apologies. I thought you were just, nope, lining up to discuss. So thank you for pressing the button. People don't do that like that. So thank you. So then, is there any discussion? No. Nobody else has any discussion? Then council, please cast your vote electronically. And all council members have entered their vote. The results are displayed. It's 10-0 unanimously. Thank you. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2281. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2281, submitting to a vote of the registered electors of the city and county of Broomfield at the coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025. A proposed amendment to section 16.2 of the Broomfield Charter regarding intergovernmental agreements.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published in full? Councilmember Leslie.
Move the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there any second? Councilmember Ward.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing any? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2281. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. Oh, I hit it. Who needs to vote? I hit my no vote. No worries. And that passes 9-1. Thank you all very much. Well, we got through those. So we'll move on. Thank you all for the discussion and we'll work on getting the word out about these charter amendments. Next, under action items this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second reading of a proposed ordinance related to medium to high density residential zoning. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And joining us this evening is Brandon Rowe, and Mr. Rowe will walk us through this item briefly and be ready to address any additional questions. We know that this is a big item and I'm sure council will have additional questions on the density. Planning Manager Rowe, please kick us off.
Thank you, City Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. Brandon Rowe, Planning Manager. Again, the item before you this evening is the second reading of the proposed ordinance number 2275 related to changes in the Broomfield Municipal Code for medium to high density residential. We did provide a full presentation on the first reading of this ordinance back on July 22nd. So It will be a brief presentation this evening, but I'm happy to answer questions. Next slide, please. As a reminder, Broomfield zoning ordinance was adopted back in 1973 as part of ordinance number 149. That ordinance established a combination of Euclidean, also known as straight zone districts, and plan unit development districts, which are a form of customized zoning. Since the creation of the residential districts in 1973, the zoning code has been updated and amended a few times, but few of those updates were specifically made to the residential zone districts themselves. Next slide, please. This slide provides a high-level overview of the changes that are proposed as part of the ordinance. The R3 zone district is an existing zone district that's proposed to be renamed from medium density to medium low density, and the development standards are proposed to be revised to accommodate townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, and lower density multi-units such as cluster cottage type products. The R5 is also an existing zone district in Broomfield, but it's being proposed to be renamed from high density to medium high density. And the development standards are proposed to be changed to accommodate neighborhood scale multi-unit development. We are proposing a new zone district as part of this ordinance, which is the R7 district, which would be the high density zone district. It's intended for higher density multifamily or multi-unit projects. Because of the scale of these projects, this district is proposed to require a site plan review and approval by council. The ordinance also proposes to remove some specific standards within the PUD code section that I got into some details with during first reading. PUD is intended to be customized zoning, and we have some standards in there that typically result in variances from those standards for every PUD that we go through. So removing those sections of code will sort of realize the intent of PUD as a customized zone district. Next slide, please. So the next three slides go into details of the individual zone districts. I read through these during the first reading. I don't want to sort of be redundant tonight, so we'll skim through those three. I told you it would be a brief presentation, so that's a quick overview of what the ordinance proposes, and I'm happy to answer any questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. We'll now proceed with public comments. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please make your way to the podium. State your name and neighborhood for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Carl Buckholz and I live in the Lackamore neighborhood. I've been a Broomfield resident for 37 years. I've been following this topic since the council study session last March. I'm generally in favor of adding higher density residential zoning category to our zoning regulations. However, my concern has to do with the proposed building height, maximum building height of 80 feet, which has the potential to obscure the city's view shed of the mountains and the general character, I think, of our city. One of the primary reasons given by staff for the proposed zoning changes is that the existing zoning regs are outdated and not consistent with the current practice of other nearby municipalities. This was stated again in the first reading of this ordinance when Councilmember Cohen asked if the R7 proposed height allowance of 80 feet is consistent with other nearby jurisdictions. Staff's paraphrased reply to his question was, yes, it is consistent with the exception of cities in Boulder County that are governed by a countywide height restriction. After that meeting, I downloaded the zoning regs for the surrounding communities and found that all bordering cities have a maximum height restriction of 35 feet for their most dense residential zoning. The height limit for Boulder County cities is also 35 feet. I forwarded this information through the Broomfield Voice webpage, but never received a reply. In staff's initial recommendation presented to council at their March study session, they proposed a height of 60 feet, nearly double that of surrounding jurisdictions. I concur that 33 feet, the current height today, is probably too low for high density housing. However, 60 feet should be more than adequate, going back to staff's initial recommendation. Their updated recommendation of 80 feet does not change the density allowance as well. Both the 60 feet and 80 foot were set for 80 dwelling units per acre. So that there's not really achieving any more density. The increased building height from 68 foot is a solution in search of a problem. It is more than double the maximum zone residential building height of all the other cities adjacent to and proximate to Boulder or to Broomfield. It does not achieve any more density and only serves to potentially obstruct our city's wonderful views of the mountains to the west. Furthermore, a lower height of 60 feet does not eliminate the possibility of a taller building, but it would ensure that developers need to go through the PUD process if they want to build a taller building. The proposed R7 zoning height as it currently stands effectively provides a rubber stamp to developers who want to rezone and build at 80 feet. The onus would be on the city to prove why the developer can't build 80 feet if R7 zoning allows for that. If they have to go through the PUD process, the onus is on the developer to prove why a taller building height is in the best interest of our community. For these reasons, I strongly urge council to amend the current proposed R7 height allowance from 80 to 60 feet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on this item? Right. Well, then questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Any questions from council? Councilmember Lim?
Yes, could community development please address the residents' question about the maximum height in adjoining jurisdictions?
I can. Thank you, Councilmember Lim. So during the first reading, I did sort of note that I had taken this midstream from another planner who had left the team. So I may have misspoken a bit. It was a combination of existing projects that we've seen developed and approved in Broomfield of taller heights. Some of those ranging from 50, mid-50s up to 80 mid-cities. There is a zoning district in Thornton that's a multifamily district that allows a 60-foot maximum height, which was consistent with what the original proposed height was prior to council requesting staff consider increasing that as we move forward through the process. So the resident is correct that a number of our immediate surrounding communities have zone districts that range from 35 to 45 feet in height. Does that answer your question?
The other point the resident made seems rather subjective, so I don't know if you want to answer this. The point made was that if someone wants to if a developer wants to bring forward a development that's, say, I think we have one 71 foot, but I can't remember what the name of it is. But if a developer wants to bring forward a height of 71 foot, and we have a 60 foot a max, then the onus is on the developer. Versus if we have an 80-foot max, even with our process, SDP process and that, then the onus is greater on the city to disprove that that building should not go forward.
I'm going to repeat the question to make sure I understand it. So I think the question is, through what is sort of a PUD process today, the burden of proof is on the applicant to show why they need certain elements of development design. Whereas with the proposed rezoning process, the burden of proof is on the city council or city to prove why or why not a project or a rezoning of land is appropriate in a place to increase that height. Is that about what you're asking?
Yes,
Okay.
he's trying to make a distinction between if the max were 60 versus the max were 80.
Yeah, so it falls on the applicant regardless, whether they're rezoning to PUD, which they would likely have to do if the property isn't already PUD, or if they were rezoning to one of the new zone districts that are proposed tonight. There is criteria in the rezoning process in the code that was added with a prior ordinance that outlines basis for approval by city council that staff would feel the applicant in their narrative would need to outline and sort of explain why it's an appropriate decision. And then council would have that choice, but council always has that choice when it comes to rezonings.
Okay. Thank you. I had another email from a resident. And could you please explain any provisions in this ordinance that provide for a step back from a much lower height residential neighborhood to a higher height in these new regulations?
I can, yep. So we recognize that the higher density zone district is higher density than what we have in Broomfield. So we have built in some requirements that would say that a site plan is required, and there would be a required step up from a radius from the existing single-family residence to the adjacent to the property. So maximum height, oh, sorry, I just had it up. The maximum height for buildings adjacent to R1, that would be within the R5 district, as proposed to be amended, would need to be limited to a maximum height of 35 feet within 35 feet of the shared property line. So within 35 feet of the shared property line, that new building on the R5 district wouldn't be able to exceed the maximum height of the single family adjacent. And we've done similar things when council approved the mixed use in the TOD districts. That also included the step up, so it was modeled after the same process.
Okay. Another question in this email from the resident. How frequently would staff be able to make a suggestion to a developer if a developer were to come and say, I'm going to build a 60-foot building and I'm going to build adjacent parking? This resident suggestion was, does staff ask the developer to consider putting parking underground in case like parking is adding to the height or adding to the sprawl or something like that?
Thank you, council member. So staff works with the applicant to try to work through their design to ensure as minimal impact on surrounding communities. It's one of the review criteria for projects. We don't typically design projects for applicants. I will say that subterranean parking is expensive. But and there are situations where we may say, maybe not bury the parking, but maybe we should look at reorienting the parking so that headlights don't shine into adjacent properties. There's not cars parking in a parking garage looking right over potential fence to a neighboring home. We'd work with them to try to create the best possible site that meets our code requirements and minimizes impacts.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Chef.
Thank you, Mayor. So I got a couple questions and some of them were spurred by our public comment tonight. So hopefully I get all of these parts correct. So when the council amended the ordinance to 80 feet, there was not an amendment to the units of density with that increase of that 20 feet in height going from 60 to 80 feet. Should there have been a change in the number of units for that extra 20 feet in height for that density?
I think that goes back to Councilmember Lim's sort of statement. It's a little bit of a subjective discussion.
Okay.
Increasing the building height doesn't necessarily require increasing the density. Some sites may need that or may benefit from that increased height because there are other constraints of needing stormwater on the property or parking or things like that, that'll still help it to achieve a higher density. I think that was the intent behind council's discussion, that not all properties are created equal and not all of them are a sort of square parcel with no obstructions. I think if council wanted to make that decision in the past, they could have directed that, but I think the thought here was just to provide some flexibility to achieve the goal densities and possibly have increased heights.
But I think that when we go from that R5 zoning to the R7 zoning, there is a difference between those two in terms of height, but also in terms of densities. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the R5 height would be proposed to be 50 foot tall with a maximum density of 30 DU per acre. And then the R7 would be 80 at 80.
Right. So we went, so originally that height was 60 though. And so those densities lined up between the 50 to the 60. foot height, and now we've increased that to 80, but without increasing those densities. So I guess, maybe that's subjective, but it seems like something's missing in that. So thank you for the conversation. Thanks for answering the question. So with a maximum of 60 feet or, as it was, and now 80 feet in that R7 zoning, is there a restriction on the PUD proposing an even higher building? Say a district in the Arista neighborhood wants to do a PUD and they want to build a 110-foot building. Is there any limits on that because now the R7 has a maximum of 80?
Councilmember, there is not. So the PUD would be treated differently and council would have the ability to make the determination if that proposed height in the plan development was appropriate.
Okay. And then I have one more question. So with these zoning ordinance districts being proposed and potentially adopted tonight, are there any parcels that are being rezoned with this ordinance tonight?
There are no rezoning of any land included this evening with the ordinance. It's just to create the regulations.
And can you briefly tell me what that process for a parcel to be rezoned would look like for a residential zoning district in the future?
I sure can. So the rezoning of a property would require public hearings. So we would start with a neighborhood meeting. We would ask the property owner to send notices to anybody a minimum of 1,000 feet away from the property line of the proposed rezone property. Staff would accept a formal application. We would go through the review. There'd be a proposal. It would require a public hearing with Land Use Review Commission, which also includes that 1,000-foot notice radius, plus a notice in the newspaper and a mailer that goes out and signs on the property. And then we would duplicate that again for the second with the city council, and then believe that rezonings are now by resolution with the charter changes, but I would have to double check that. I don't have that on me, but it would require public hearings at minimum.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. The Mayor Pro Tem stepped a little bit on the area I wanted to cover, but because I'm sensitive to what the resident was talking about and sort of views, and it's protecting views is difficult. I have an empty field across from my house. I know I'm probably living on borrowed time before it goes away, but I can hope. Because I have a view from my second window of mountains. But I was a little confused by the language choice of burden of proof. But I think if we adopt R7 and then some land is rezoned to R7 and there is no R7 right now, we're giving the developer right to do 80 feet, right? It's not a trial to be determined who has to prove it, but we're giving them that right to go to 80 feet. Correct.
That's correct as part of the
Okay.
rezoning.
So I think the point is, and I think to be made, there is nothing that is R7 now. And I think that's where maybe the discussion will happen is when land comes forward and says, I want to be R7, we can look and see if it's affecting property values, if it's, there's a view shed that's long-term and we shouldn't damage it, then we can say, well, maybe R7 isn't appropriate, maybe R5 is, et cetera, et cetera. But I think my understanding, the value of R7s, we're trying to meet state mandates of higher density, and there might be areas in Broomfield where it's most appropriate, or if you look along US 36, there are areas that could go much higher and probably wouldn't impact people's views and provide higher density. I think that's the objective, correct?
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and it would be subject to council's determination if it's an appropriate rezoning. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just see this as something that we probably will see more of. I'll say this quickly and not a question, but I used to live in Seattle 25 years now. And when I go back, areas that were 2 stories and 3 stories are now 8 stories. And that's how communities are addressing affordability and transit is going up. And I think that's probably our future here that we'll need to take into account going forward. But thank you for the answers.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilmember Cohen, you're done? Okay. Yeah, so to clarify before you leave, Mr. Rowe, and I am also very cognizant of our residents' feedback. This is not a given, right? They would still have to apply for a public hearing rezoning in order to move forward with any type of R7.
That's correct, Mayor. So any rezoning does still require that public process. That would
Okay.
be a publicly noticed meeting.
All right, well, thank you. I'm going to allow you to come up and do a follow-up. I will.
Appreciate the discussion. I just wanted to, on the question about going before the council for a rezoning, if you want to rezone a property. I don't know the answer to this, but does a developer have to already have a building plan when they go through rezoning? Or can they rezone a property before they have a building plan and then come back and propose a development that has a taller height? Because if it is at 80 feet, they could go through the rezoning process, get it zoned for that, and then come back later and go through the development process to build an 80-foot building. And that might not be aware in the community that, you know, they're going to do that when it goes through rezoning. So I don't know the answer to that question.
I'll let
but I'm
Mr. Rowe
asking.
answer it. You're welcome.
That is a good question. So when a property is rezoned to a straight district or Euclidean district like the R7, there would not typically be a building plan or building design with it. So council would be making the decision of sort of assuming the maximum impact of the development, if that's appropriate for the site based on the information.
Location.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions from my colleagues? No, there being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2275. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2275 to amend the Broomfield Municipal Code, Title 17, related to medium to high density residential zoning.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading and order it published by title? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, Councilmember Nguyen.
I second this motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lim.
I did vote for the amendment to raise the height to 80 feet. And I am going to change my position on that. I think that even though there is a thorough process with the public hearing for rezoning, I think it's better if we set the maximum at 60 feet and allow for unusual exceptions. And I appreciate the residents' comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting in favor of this ordinance. One, because I believe in having the ability for developers to have a higher density threshold. Obviously, it is still council's decision as to whether or not a rezone is given to the developer, and council can decide if it's an appropriate place for that rezone. But I think to outright deny and make developers continue to jump through hoops and expand the timeline of development, when that is one thing that contributes to the cost of a development, is how long does it take to go through the development process? If one of our goals is to address affordability, I don't see why we would make it harder by having them to not only rezone a property, but also have to come back and ask for an amendment or a variance to that zoning so they can go higher in an area, let's say, like Arista or along US 36, where I think most of us, if not all of us, would agree, those are areas that are pretty ripe for having a much higher building height and density. So I think on those grounds, my colleagues should vote yes on this, knowing that the ultimate decision still lies with council as to whether or not that rezone goes forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Leslie.
Mayor, yeah, I'm gonna go along with my colleague, Councilmember Lim. I'd rather us have the 60-foot established, and then if the developer wants something higher and it makes sense, such as Councilmember Ward mentioned, then let them make that proposal to us. We've heard so many times in development that has come before us residents coming and expressing their deep concerns about losing their views. And I'm very sensitive to Councilmember Cohen's situation where he may lose his view of the mountains. I'm very concerned about that. So I'm going to support any amendment that would lower that to 60 feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to thank the residents that have engaged on this conversation regarding the density. I appreciate staff for the engagement with residents, especially through the Broomfield Voice. I'm aware of the concern there is for the additional height limits in the R7 zoning, but I do not believe that this 80-foot or 60-foot will prevent buildings from being built that are 80 feet or taller, given the PUD process. These changes in residential zones allow for more understanding in residential development, as well as to incentivize sustainable growth and development patterns. These residential zone districts will create more opportunities, I believe, in Broomfield for a variety of housing that don't exist at this point, while also allowing the developers to utilize the standard code as opposed to the de facto PUD as has been done before. I don't believe that I do believe that as parcels go through the zoning or rezoning process, residents will have the opportunity to engage in that process, participate in that process, voice any concerns or support for those zoning changes. And council ultimately has that ability to consider the fit and the impacts of that zoning and those developments. So I do believe, just as I've stated before, the most important decisions that council makes is regarding development, and those conversations, given these changes in zoning districts, will be even that much more important. So I do plan on supporting this tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm similar in opinion that we have a high housing crisis right now, and allowing developers to build potential more affordable housing units or even just duplexes or any sort of items. And I want to state that the Broomfield Housing Alliance, Open Trails, Land Use Review Commission, they're generally supportive of this measure. I believe that we need to address the housing crisis now. And similar to Councilmember Ward and Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf, I am very similar views. And, I understand that the view might change, but we're facing a crisis and we need to address it now. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Just quickly, I would say I appreciate what Councilmember Ward stated. I think that was very well stated, that we're creating the opportunities, and the fewer restrictions up front, the more likely developers will choose Broomfield or want to move forward with projects here. And we do need more housing here to help cut down our rental rates and make housing more affordable. The future, unfortunately, is taller. I think we've seen that in many other communities, that when they are facing the challenges we're facing now, the only way to resolve them is to go up. But I think the decisions will be with future councils to make sure that it is properly placed. An 80-foot building across from my house would be nice in the summer for the shade, but I think the rest of the neighbors would oppose it for the view that we're still hanging on to. But I trust that in the future that the decision on RS8 would be done wisely by councils. I can think of some land locations in my ward that I think it would be pretty appropriate and wouldn't get actually much opposition. I can think of locations elsewhere in Broomfield, much more toward the west, where it would be inappropriate. But I think it's an option that we're providing, and to meet the state's desire for and our desire for more density to lower housing costs. So I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate this whole process, but I just want to, think back through some of the areas we have gone through the PUD process in baseline. It's greater than 80 feet. So there is a way to get a higher height. And I'd agree with Mayor Pro Tem that these decisions are some of the most impactful that we make. And I'm actually okay with the R7 being 80 feet, because it gives otherwise you're going only from the R5 at 50 feet up to R6 is only 60 feet. We're going to have a lot more PUDs. So in order to get around that process, I agree that that's an appropriate height, but it would have to be used with caution. And that is a critical decision of future councils. So I will vote for it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Real quick too, just to add another point to this, is that a lot of times our home builders and people who are part of this planning process, they need some sort of consistency and predictability. And this offers that to them. And they can also talk to other people who, if it's a mixed use area, that they could have commercial as well. So I think it just provides an opportunity for people to have a predictable sense of what it is zoned for and what's to be expected in that area. And we should do more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to support this tonight, echoing a lot of the comments already made. We need to make sure that we are building density and building housing for people, as well as giving developers the ability to do this as inexpensively as possible, because that leads to affordability. And having a district that allows the height rather than having to go through the variance process is important. And as everyone else has stated, the fact that there will be public comment available, there will be public input on the rezoning process, and any council that doesn't ask the question at the time. So if a developer came today and said, I want to do an R7, the question would be asked by many people, how tall are you going to be? And they may not have building plans yet, but they'll have an idea of what they want to build. So I think that's up to a future council to make those questions known and decide whether or not that zoning is appropriate for that lot. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's something to note, if nobody else has any discussion, it gets more expensive as you go higher. So it's not necessarily going to get cheaper at 80 feet. I mean, it gets a lot more complicated with, well, just having to deal with our soil. So I don't think just having that height restriction is going to create a lot of high buildings, just because I know other cities like Littleton, they've passed some infinity zoning and nobody is building higher than, a certain amount, just because it's more cost effective. So I do agree that the public process needs to stay intact, and people who are wanted to keep track of what's coming up should sign up for Be in the Loop notifications of our public hearings. I do realize that notices would only be in the surrounding areas, so it's important to sign up for those emails, get the email alerts so that you know what's coming up. And Councilmember Leslie.
Thanks. I just want to point out that in some cases, those who are at the 80-foot level will be the ones with the view, and those below will lose their view. So.
Thank you for that. All right, so any other discussion? There being no further, let's move forward on the vote on ordinance number 2275. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes 8-2. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rowe and team, for your work on this. We're going to go ahead and take our 10-minute recess. It is 8:08. We'll be back at 8:18. Thank you. Welcome back. We're back from break and we're on item 7C. This evening, it's council's consideration on first reading of a proposed ordinance related to public land dedication. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
This is an easy introduction. Mr. Rowe is going to continue this conversation on a separate item. Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Brandon Rowe, Planning Manager. So the second item I have for you this evening is related to the first reading of an ordinance for proposed updates to the code related to the public land dedication requirements. I'm going to say PLD throughout the presentation for brevity, just the abbreviation. Next slide, please. So the PLD regulations are a critical element of new residential development in our community. They help to ensure that residential development contributes proportionally to the parks, open space, trails, and recreation infrastructure of the community itself. PLD requirements are based on the anticipated population growth from development, and PLD can be satisfied through either land dedication, cash in lieu, or a combination of the two. Currently, Broomfield has limited regulations related to PLD, which were originally adopted in 1987. Next slide, please. The original PLD code requirements have been refined and modernized. Originally, they operated based on the number of units as opposed to the density generated. For a few decades now, we've transitioned to a policy of using density modeling for generating PLD obligations. The most recent version of the OSPRT plan, or the Open Space Parks Recreation and Trails Plan, was adopted by City Council in February of 2024. That plan included some proposed changes to PLD and proposed that the PLD requirements be codified in the municipal code. That's what brought us here. It's been a process that's been going on for well over a year that included conversations with multiple parties. Next slide, please. Very briefly, we have the umbrella term of open lands. I wanted just some detail on this during the study session. So happy to answer any questions, but open lands encompasses open space. That's typically your native land, natural areas that are preserved and undeveloped, agricultural lands that are being preserved, parks, which are the more developed lands. So you think of like recreation facilities, fields, playing courts, things like that. And then other open lands, which is sort of a catch-all that includes golf courses, the cemetery, other items like that. The fourth category that's sort of on the outside is public and private open lands. So Broomfield also requires residential developers to provide varied percentages of private open area as part of their development. That's also something that is factored into the bigger discussion of this topic. So next slide, please. There were a number of reasons why we're proposing to modify public land dedication at this time. It spans 2 slides. I won't read them verbatim, but they were shared with council. They're consistent with the topics we discussed during the study session. They were sort of fleshed out during the OSPRT plan update with meetings with residents, community leaders, business, developers, our advisory groups. This includes the Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee, the Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services Advisory Committee, and representatives from groups like BHA. So we can go to the next slide, please. Like I said, it continues over. A lot of this is focusing on helping multi-unit projects provide on-site PLD, particularly on smaller infill sites. As Broomfield starts to reach sort of that crescendo of developing our 33 plus or minus square miles, infill is becoming a bigger element of development that council is looking at. We want to balance community goals that have been established, like our open lands goal and inclusionary housing. And we want to help to advance the desire for higher density development to help achieve not only affordability, but housing diversity in stock. So next slide, please. The current PLD policy is based on the 2005 OSPRT plan, establishes a requirement of 24 acres of public land dedication per 1,000 residents generated. Broomfield currently has generation rates based on unit types. Those are highlighted on the screen here. But generally, single unit or duplex units generate just under three individuals per household, townhomes at 2.5, and then apartments and condos for 1.91. There is also a reduced rate for age-restricted communities based on the type of unit they have. The current requirements require 25% of the project area, so the site acreage, to be on-site PLD, and then allows for the remaining obligation for the total public land dedication for the project to be met through, again, additional on-site dedications, cash in lieu, or a combination of more land and cash in lieu. The current cash in lieu rate is $86,000 per acre. Next slide. The 2024 OSPRT plan proposed 3 unique methods for meeting public land dedication, and it's based on the type of residential project being proposed. Method one is for market rate residential projects. What this means is it's projects that are providing all units that are selling at what the market is demanding. They're meeting their required inclusionary housing obligation through a cash in lieu payment, not providing any on-site units. Method 2 is 100% income aligned housing at or below 60% of the area median income. This is a priority sort of range of affordability that was identified in the housing needs assessment. And then the third methodology is the type of residential projects that the community is seeing large numbers of and council is seeing in their decision making, and it's mixed income housing. So projects that have market rate and then provide a percentage of units that are above 60%, or 100% affordable projects that have affordability that are above that 60% ideal zone. Next slide, please. So the first method for 100% market rate probably looks pretty familiar to a slide a couple slides ago, because we're not proposing any changes in the satisfaction of PLD. So still requiring 25% of the property to be on-site public land dedication. The unmet balance would be met through either additional land or cash in lieu payments at the $86,000 per acre. And then that far right column for the following tables all outlines a sort of what if the project doesn't meet the minimum on-site dedication requirements. Sometimes happens with smaller sites. What typically happens in that case is that we would have them make up that on-site balance through a market value payment. So it's essentially what the land is worth. So if land is $70,000, or I'll do $170,000 per acre, hypothetically, and they owe us 1 acre of on-site dedication to be $170,000 plus the additional $86,000 per acre for additional PLD. The math gets a little more complicated. I'm not going to dive into that for all the tables, but I sort of wanted to highlight it and not ignore that last column that has a lot of words in it. Next slide, please. So for the 100% income aligned projects that do meet the 60% AMI or provide housing at a lower affordability rate below 60%, we look at it based on size. So 10 acres or greater, we reduce the on-site dedication requirement from 25% to 20%. For less than 10 acres, we're looking to reduce that further to 15%. That goes back to infill sites are difficult to develop, and we want to incentivize affordability. Cash in lieu if the on-site public land dedication requirement is met. So if they meet that 20% or 15% obligation, the ordinance proposes to reduce the cash in lieu and essentially waive it to 0. If they don't meet the on-site dedication, they would provide a cash payment to satisfy it, and then anything beyond that would be waived as well. The goal here is to get a combination of public land dedication and affordable units to continue to advance both community goals without having to sacrifice one or the other to achieve. Next slide, please. So again, the mixed income projects are the projects that council sees the most of. We stick with that same 10-acre sort of threshold. 10 acres or more, 20% of the on-site dedication. Less than 10 acres, 15%. And then if you're providing public land dedication of varied amounts, you would potentially be eligible for reductions in cash in lieu obligations. The next few slides will go through some tables. If you remember from the study session, it's sort of that matrix where you put one finger on one side and one on the other and trace it down. That's how you would help to calculate what that reduction would be. So next slide, please. So we have two of these tables that would be incorporated in the municipal code, one for 4 rent units. And here you can see that it's broken up with the number or the percentage of residential development being affordable or income aligned, and then the thresholds of the ranges of affordability. So if you were to use your fingers, a project that is providing 40% of their units at 61 to 70% of AMI would be eligible for a 35% reduction in cash in lieu. If you were providing 100% at 60%, like we talked about, that's a full reduction that we showed in the prior table. So this helps with the mixed incomes. The next slide does the same thing for for sale units. The municipal code has the inclusionary housing ordinance. It establishes different ranges of affordability for units that are for sale based on the unit type. So single family, attached, detached, townhomes, condos, those sorts of things. So for sale products that are at 100% or below area median income would be eligible for reductions in cash in lieu if they were at 60 or ranging from 12 to 60% or more of the project. The 12% at 100% or below results in a 12% reduction in cash in lieu. That is the bare minimum that's required by the IHO. So we wanted to incentivize folks providing those units on site, even if it's just the requirement, not beyond the requirement. Next slide, please. So this is just a sort of summary of it, and it walks through that example. So if we had 300 apartments on a 10-acre property with 20% of the units at 60% AMI, it qualifies for a 20% reduction in cash in lieu. So instead of having a approximately $1 million cash in lieu payment, that'd be reduced to about $800,000. In the end, we would still receive 2 acres of land on site and $800,000 in cash in lieu, with a net decrease of just that 202 roughly. Next slide, please. This slide, we may come back to it with questions, but this is just an overall summary of the current policy and then the proposed sort of strategies of meeting PLD with the 3 new options. Next slide. In addition to the PLD methodologies, the ordinance proposes some additional changes. This includes that projects that are 3 acres or less would be eligible for PLD, but rather than transferring ownership and maintenance responsibilities of those smaller tracts to the city and county, they would remain privately owned and maintained with a permanent public access easement placed over it. We do have a draft of that public access easement being drafted. So if council were to move forward with this, we could share that once the ordinance is approved. And it's a template, so it would be standard for most projects with some special conditions for the one-offs, because we all know every development has its own unique elements. We're also proposing that projects that include detention ponds, drainage channels, other water bodies, possible school sites, continue to receive some credit for public land dedication. This would be reduced in some cases. So detention ponds and drainage channels are proposed to be reduced from a 50% credit to a 25%. Lakes, ponds, creeks, streams, rivers, reservoirs is the inverse. We're proposing to increase that from 25% to 50%. And during the study session, I had mentioned that those natural elements or reservoirs, whether man-made or natural, provide a unique element of more habitat and native environment for some of our wildlife. There's a greater utilization of that versus a concrete drainage channel. So next slide, please. We're also proposing to correct terminology in Title 17. We reference open space when it should be a reference to private open area. So we're going through and proposing to change that just for clarification. We're proposing to change the minimum required private open area for residential PUDs from 40% to 30%. This would mean that a development zone PUD would be required to provide the minimum on-site PLD and 30% additional for private open area. So assuming it was a small site, we're still looking at 45% of the site being used for green space. Cash in lieu is proposed to be calculated every 2 years based on large parcel sales. The current rate, like I said, is $86,000. We are looking at possibly moving forward with that update later in 2025, which is aligned with the OSPRT plan's timeline. Key elements that remain unchanged. The OSPRT's plan objective to preserve 40% of Broomfield as open lands would remain. We're not proposing to change that number. I think Director Pritz had mentioned we're close to like 37-ish%. That's an estimate in one of her recent presentations. So we're continuing to strive to hit that 40%. Next slide, please. So if approved this evening on first reading, the ordinance would be published in full and scheduled for a second reading and public hearing, tentatively scheduled on September 23rd. If it's approved tonight, we would move forward with that date. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. We'll now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We'll start with in-person public comments. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please make your way to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Anyone online? All right, thank you. We'll go to questions from council next. Any council member questions? Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Rowe, I really appreciate your presentation. I see it as a way of updating the toolbox, allowing for flexibility. It makes sense to me. And we're expanding the scope of how we address these projects. So I guess my question is pretty generic here is, how limited is the PLD from 1987?
It is, it's a completely different strategy. So we end up getting less PLD generally compared to the population generation, just because it's based on unit counts. And we all know that some residential unit types generate more folks, especially more diverse household groups that may utilize outdoor space differently than others. So.
Yeah, and my follow-up question for that, thank you for answering, is going to be, one thing I like to say is that this council could do nothing. We could just say, no, we're not going to pass this ordinance. We're just going to ignore it. What would happen if we did that? What if we did not implement these ordinances? Would we see less opportunities for growth? Would we see less projects that could be made with an updated PLD?
Yeah, so I would say that staff would continue to work with the policy that we have in place, which is the 25% on-site requirement and 24 acres per 1,000 residents. I think it's fair to say that we've seen projects historically come to council and ask this body to make a decision to weigh public land dedication versus affordable housing. So the goal here is to set those expectations as opposed to sort of leaving that fluid for public hearing situations.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. I appreciate your time and the presentation. Those are my questions, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim.
I don't have any questions on the adjustments for the PLD for the inclusionary housing. I do have questions on the first slide of the other proposed changes. If you could go back to that, maybe it would be helpful for reference.
That's like 4 or 5 slides back. Is that the 3 acres sites for the private ownership? and
Yeah,
maintenance?
the 3 acre sites for the private ownership and, first go to the second point. So I understand the preference for the reservoirs over the detention ponds as an aesthetic value. Given current events, I would hope that someone would appreciate my paranoia here. Can we discuss have we discussed with Public Works that the preference here is for the developer to include reservoirs versus detention ponds. How does that change a development's stormwater drainage? And then how does making any public land that's less than 3 acres impact stormwater drainage in a development?
I will do my best, and I had looked back at the Public Works folks who are lining the back wall. I will say, typically in the scope of projects that we have for development, the detention ponds are serving to ensure that the site doesn't create offsite impacts versus actual large-scale reservoirs. I think Anthem is a good example that does have the Sienna Reservoir. That was a large master plan community. It goes back to that discussion that a lot of our land is still is now transitioning to infill. And I would defer to Public Works or engineering to speak to the water system itself and whether or not additional reservoirs are needed.
So Miss Allen and Mr. Rudd, as they make their way down, Mr. Rowe is, I don't want to say fortunate or unfortunate, but the filter through which Councilmember Lim is asking her question regarding the difference between retention, detention, and reservoirs. I know that I now am well-versed with the difference of the 3 of those in the last 8 weeks. So we need to put that filter on, having this particular conversation included in the development conversation of what the preference is. But also, as we move forward on asset management and maintenance, has to be part of the answer as well. So Ms. Allen, you want to kick us off, and then Mr. Ruck can fill in any of those gaps?
Sure, I'm happy to try. Katie Allen, Director of Community Development. So when a property develops, it changes the infiltration rate of stormwater. And it runs off faster, and there's more quantity of water going into downstream onto adjacent properties. And so what's required is that that water is detained, allowed to infiltrate, and then released at a historic or lower rate. And that is a detention pond. Retention ponds are not allowed because they require a water right. So that stormwater has to be controlled, but it can't be held unless there's a water right associated with it. And that's a state law. So that's, and also in our standards. So when a property develops, we are looking specifically at historic drainage patterns and new developed drainage patterns and quantity and water quality and where it releases. And that's why you always, a detention pond is the typical answer. There are other ways to do that. But we can't allow them to detain that stormwater by state rule.
Ken Rutt, Director of Water Utilities. Ms. Allen did a great job of providing the answer in the summary. So overall, operational wise too, maintenance and operational is, there's significant differences between detention maintenance and retention maintenance in ponds. So not only is it the best practices for the detention ponds, it is also best practices for our maintenance and operations.
Okay, so am I hearing you say that it's much simpler for detention ponds because you don't have to have a water right? You have the drainage go into the detention pond. So it's much simpler, but yet in this ordinance, we're actually preferencing reservoirs, which complicate the requirements on the developer. Am I misunderstanding that?
I'm going to jump in and might be speaking for Director Pritz, but so a detention pond is engineered. Typically, there might be a low flow concrete channel. There's often a graded outlet structure, and on a smaller site, sometimes those are tricky to make a large habitat amenity. And so that might not be
quality public land. I think that is where that's coming from. On a really large development or with a large stream channel, we have a lot more opportunity to really make that a nice amenity and reduce the flow and add sinuosity and a habitat and a higher quality situation. But on a lot of developments, they do tend to be, because of site constraints, a little more engineered and have structures to them that may not have the quality that open space is looking for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. Continuing with the conversation about detention ponds real quick. In general, I've noticed, and correct me if this is, or let me know if this is correct, detention ponds generally are dry. They're not holding any water. I just want to reiterate what I heard from Councilmember Lim's questions, correct?
That is correct. We have a certain time frame they have to be drained down.
I asked that question because 2 years ago, when I went to the National League of Cities City Summit Conference in Atlanta, I did take one of the tours that they offer to the attendees. And Atlanta did a really interesting project in an existing neighborhood, but this could be translated to a new development, where they incorporated a park into the detention pond. Knowing that detention ponds only hold water for a certain period of time, they, for lack of a better term, took out two birds with one stone. And if that is something a developer, let's say, wanted to propose, I think under this new proposed changes for credits, they're kind of disincentivized from providing that park, and that park would be probably a more useful public land dedication than just a straight detention pond in my mind. So kind of walk me through, let's say, that hypothetical.
I'm going to stick to my role as an engineer. So yes, you can.
And yes, feel free. Anyone can answer that question.
So the community park pond is a pond. It could be regraded and engineered to have a permanent water surface, but also provide stormwater detention, and that stormwater would drain out. So like a reservoir, plaster reservoir serves as both the permanent water surface and a stormwater pond. So they could be combined, yes. The rest of the question, I think, is for planning or open space.
I just wanted to add that I think the detention ponds that we're talking about here are the type that are definitely very engineered, and they need to be cleaned out on a regular basis to function. So having any kind of habitat or shrubbery or anything like that growing in the detention pond is something that is a maintenance issue that has to be taken care of on a regular basis to make sure that the water is released properly. So that's why the preference is more for these natural features. Detention ponds, I think when people do develop, Katie, correct me, but I think they have to address the detention of the water and the release. And oftentimes those have to be much more engineered structures. So that's why at times we've been very concerned about having to give 50% credit for something that really is serving a very different purpose. To the parks question, I wanted to see if Clay might want to add to a little bit to that for you, Councilmember Lim.
Good evening, Clay Shuck, Director of Operations. Thank you for the question. I think in our experience with the detention ponds, a couple issues come up. One, you continue to hear about the maintenance issues that occur with them. The second is really when we're looking at them as a usable space, either multi-purpose fields or as a true park, there's limited access. There's issues with ADA access into those areas because typically the slopes are higher than what you would have on a regular playground or regular field. And so those are probably our biggest concerns when we look at detention ponds for actual parks or multi-purpose fields.
I mean, I'm certainly not saying every detention pond could potentially be that, but we do have some existing developments that have some fairly large detention ponds. And I would say we're relatively comparable to the one that I saw in Atlanta, and they certainly addressed ADA accessibility and maintenance issues. So it's not an insurmountable challenge. So I go back to my question, doesn't this change in dedication disincentivize maybe a unique approach to satisfying requirements that we have for the public land dedication, whether that be open space, parks, et cetera?
Councilmember Ward, you're going right back where I wanted to bring us back to as well. So the concept behind codifying this is to create a baseline. There's always the opportunity for us to work with developers like we do with every project for flexible, creative solutions. And it could be a variance that council were to approve to provide greater credit for something that was not as engineered and was more of a dual use, like the park that you saw in Atlanta. So we're saying to reduce it as a baseline, but any developer could come in and request council to consider it as an exception to the norm and have that variance granted. So that would be at the discretion of council.
Okay, thank you. My next question goes to the kind of the smaller parcels that you had talked about earlier in the presentation and some challenges they may have in terms of meeting that requirement for PLD. Let's say a parcel is 2 acres large. I assume those probably have a much more challenging time meeting public land dedications, which means they also probably have a much harder time with development just in general. As we continue to see infill, are we expecting to see much smaller parcels come forward for redevelopment?
Councilmember, that's a great connection to the last item I had with you, which was that we do see infill having smaller sites and that's more difficult. So we're revising zoning districts to make it easier to develop.
Okay, thank you for that. Building on that, excuse me, sorry. If requiring a property that's already going to have a smaller developable area, probably in an area that's not going to be for council well suited for extremely high density development, doesn't the requirement for the payment really disincentivize and make it more cost ineffective to redevelop those parcels? Or if they do get redeveloped, they're just more expensive properties that are not necessarily addressing our housing issue?
I think generally smaller parcels are more challenging to develop just because there's more constraints. So it would logically be more expensive. I think that there are some opportunities there if they were to incorporate the affordable housing, like the ordinance is trying to incentivize both. There's the reduction in cost when it comes to public land dedication, but income aligned housing is expensive as well. But that's where that sort of flexibility with projects could come in, and council could help to provide relief if they were to grant variances for certain things. But those are sort of the individualized projects that may want to seek additional support as they develop really tough sites.
That would require a variance,
That would
which
require a
then
variance.
continues to extend the timeline of development and add costs, correct?
So the variance could be part of just the overall site plan that they move forward with. A lot of those smaller sites are going to be zoned probably PUD at this point. So it could be bundled together, but hypothetically it could add a hurdle. But that's something that staff would work with them early on in the process to identify. That way they're not sort of caught off guard midway through the stream of development review.
Okay, thank you. My final question is, obviously our goal for the community is 40% open space, public land dedication of some sort. When we reach that 40% threshold, are we going to revisit the public land dedication and either reduce it, eliminate it, or are we going to continue to have it and use it to exceed the 40%? Or what, do we have a plan for once we hit that threshold?
That is a great question. I'm going to look over my shoulder to Director Pritz and see if she might have a thought on that. So I'll hand over to her.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ward. So I don't think there is any goal beyond the 40% that we have ever discussed. I think at that point, that would be looked at closely by the community and determined what should be done. The public land dedication is just one piece of one of our tools to reach the 40% open lands. So, I think I'm not sure what would happen at that point. It's an interesting question, and I think we'd be evaluating where we are. I think that would be quite a ways into the future of the development of our community to get to that point.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have an absolute answer for you. I'm sorry on that.
That's totally fine. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Right, thank you. This has raised a couple questions for me based on these recent discussions, and that is the retention ponds. And so I just want to make get a clarification here on the type of land dedications under the second box with the lakes, ponds, creeks. Are those ponds then retention ponds? And should that be? It's not. I just did a quick search of the document. The word retention never occurs.
There are some developments that have naturally or semi-naturally existing ponds. I think Dillon Point is the example that I could point to that has the pond that they made the point to enhance and improve the habitat at the request of open space. That's sort of where we're picturing. They did have water rights for that one, but I don't know the details of that. And we could look into that more if you wanted for second reading.
That would be great. And then also some type of, I think we're gonna get into this in the next agenda item, maybe a little bit on the proper water right decrees, but nothing should count for the proposed dedication unless there is properly, let's say you've gone through the proper process to have that that decree that says that they can store the water if it is a retention pond, something in that realm. Is that a fair question to come back at the next reading?
It's a fair question, and one that Mr. Laurie is very eager to address during the next topic.
So I'll leave it at that, but yeah, as we go to the next item, there might be something from that just for clarification, because just so we don't keep finding ourselves in this like weird space of not having every box checked. So before they get credit, it should be properly decreed. That would be my thought. So thank you, and that is all my questions.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So earlier, Councilmember Nguyen used the word toolbox. And I believe it might have been for the previous conversation, but it jogged my mind about the affordable projects of the past. Per the inclusionary housing ordinance, it states additional incentives may be considered by the city to include a partial waiver of public land dedication requirements. And so when I was thinking through this, it seems like that I recall that when we were working with a residential developer in the past, that Broomfield considered the PLD requirements and the cash in lieu as part of this menu offered to incentivize deed restricted units. So I believe that there's been at least one project, if not more, that what we're doing tonight is formalizing that process that we used prior, that was more of an informal process, and providing more certainty to our developers, but also providing more certainty to our residents and our council when we are going through these PLD conversations. Is that correct? That we used to offer more of an informal kind of toolbox or menu of items when considering affordable housing, and this creates more of a standardized procedure.
Mayor Pro Tem, that's correct. So each of those projects prior to this proposed ordinance was sort of a one-off. We'll give this, you give that. This creates sort of those known expectations that we keep reiterating that developers are asking for to help move their projects forward. So we would set the baseline so they know what to expect before even coming in for a pre-application meeting at the very beginning of a project.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council? No further questions. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2273. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2273 to amend the Broomfield Municipal Code, Title 16 and Title 17 related to public land dedication and other definitions related to open space and recreation facilities.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading and order published in full? Councilmember Henkel.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Wynn.
I second this motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance 2273. Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously, 10-0. Thank you all for the efforts and the great conversation. The final item under action items this evening is proposed resolution to enter into an IGA with the city of Louisville for leases of fully consumable water to each other. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rutt is going to introduce this item, but then Mr. Laurie is going to walk us through this item. And I think we'll go a little bit off script, given the current circumstances of water rights, water shares, where they can live, under what circumstances they can be there, stay there. And then the really solidifying to Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Anderson's question. You'll see some other municipalities that are drafting ordinances that are requiring developers outside of the PUD, I'm sorry, the PLD, to bring their own water. So in addition to PLD and drainage, all of those engineering components that Ms. Allen spoke about, they are now requiring developers to secure their own water. We have a circumstance that's occurring right now where water rights were sold, and community conversations have occurred with that particular community indicating that those shares and rights are not usable. Kind of back to Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Anderson's point of to what degree and at what point do we validate the complexity of the water that they're bringing and storing, particularly if it's a reservoir. I'm not saying we're going to get into that tonight, Mayor, but it certainly influences and colors the answers that'll be forthcoming on this particular item. Mr. Rutt.
Well, thank you. Manager Hoffman, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, this is Ken Rutt, Water Utilities Director. Still getting used to that piece. We're pleased to come before you today and introduce the topic of our agenda item of intergovernment agreement with the city of Louisville for leases of water, which centers around our Marshall shares along with our Sienna Reservoir. And tonight we have Mark Laurie, who is our superintendent of our Water Resources Division. He has been with Broomfield about 3.5 years. He got promoted to superintendent last October. He was the Water Resources Administrator. Before that, he has about 14 years of water resources experience, including flood risk, national disasters at both the federal and state level. And he also has 4 years of experience working with the U.S. Army of Corps of Engineers. So we're pleased to have Mark on our staff. He brings a wealth of knowledge, and hopefully we can answer all your questions tonight.
Right. Hello, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. My machine has decided to blank out on me a few times tonight. So hopefully I can get through this with all the details I wanted to cover. Mark Laurie, Superintendent of Water Resources. I'll try to give you a brief overview of the background and rationale for this IGA, and then happy to answer questions. Next slide, please. So as Ken mentioned, this stems from our Marshall change case that we did over the last 5 years or so. That case was completed last September when we got our decree. And what we did in that case was we applied to Water Court to change our 157 Marshall shares from their original agricultural irrigation uses so that we could use them for all of our municipal purposes. So for water supply and reuse and so forth. whenever you change water rights, including shares in a ditch system like that, the court imposes all kinds of terms and requirements, and basically they're trying to make sure you don't injure other water rights holders. So you have to do a whole bunch of rigmarole in terms of engineering and legal process to make sure that you're replacing water where it used to flow back into streams and whatnot. And usually those conditions arise from opposers who file in the case. Louisville was one of the opposers in our case, and I'll get to some of their concerns in a few minutes. So the decree requires Broomfield to make releases to an unnamed tributary to Coal Creek. It's a tributary that flows through Anthem Ranch and then eventually onto Erie's airport land. And those releases are required because Sienna Reservoir, which is one of the reservoirs and ponds that were included in the Marshall Decree, causes what we call depletions to the stream downstream, essentially, occasionally by accident, essentially. The reservoir stores water when we're not in priority to store that water. So we have to replace that water to keep other water rights holders whole. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned that Louisville was one of the opposers in the case. They were the very last opposer to settle out of the case. So we reached a final settlement agreement with them just before the case was going to go to trial. So we were able to settle the whole case without a trial, which saved us lots of work and lots of time and lots of effort. Louisville had two main requirements. One, they wanted to make sure that Broomfield had the physical means to release water to that tributary to Coal Creek and eventually to Coal Creek throughout the year. So whenever you have these requirements, you have return flow requirements or augmentation requirements, you have to be able to get water into that creek all year long. So they had that concern. And then they also raised the issue of these Anthem ponds. I know we had some questions come in about those ponds, and I'll try to address those when I get to that. They wanted to make sure that those Anthem ponds, which intercept water released by Sienna that flows into that creek where they have water rights, they wanted to make sure those ponds were compliant with state water law. So those were their two big issues. Broomfield already had, when we started our negotiations with Louisville, two options for making those required releases to Coal Creek. The first one is we could actually use our Marshall water that we get from our Marshall shares that flows in Community Ditch. There's a structure that allows us to release water from that ditch into Coal Creek. We can really only do that when the ditch is running, which is typically irrigation season, like June to September. And then when we do that, because the decree has all those requirements about return flows and all that other stuff, it generates new obligations to return water to certain streams based on where that water used to be used for irrigation. So it's not always our first choice for making those augmentation releases, but it is the choice we use occasionally. We can also make physical releases of water from Sienna Reservoir that'll flow down that creek through the Anthem ponds to Erie Airport into Coal Creek. There's two disadvantages of that. One, it requires us to use water that we feel is very, very valuable to us. It's Windy Gap water, Windy Gap project water. That water serves a bunch of other purposes in our system. We don't like to always use it just for making releases to a stream. We want to be able to treat it and use it in other ways. And two, there's a disadvantage of the Sienna releases because Louisville made sure, and this was justifiable, made sure that we don't get credit for those releases under our decree until we have a measurement station on that stream that measures just how much of that water makes it from Sienna through all the intervening ponds and actually makes it to Coal Creek. We don't have that measurement station now. We're in discussions with Erie Airport to locate it on the stream on Erie Airport. So essentially, Louisville was requiring Broomfield to have a year-round source for replacement on Water Creek and make sure that those Anthem ponds were compliant with water flow. Next slide, please. So the IGA, we called it a water lease. It's really essentially a swap or a trade. So Louisville is going to help meet Broomfield's obligations on Coal Creek as needed with water from their wastewater treatment plant, which is located on Coal Creek. And sort of in reverse, Broomfield is going to help meet Louisville's obligations on Big Dry Creek, which they have those obligations also because of Marshall change case that they did some years ago. And we'll release that water from our water recovery facility on Big Dry Creek. The agreement is limited to 150 acre feet per year of delivery for each party. So there's a maximum limit. There's some monthly limits. And there's also provisions in there that if we're in a severe drought or if there's some other kind of emergency, if the water's not available, we don't have to make the releases. Either party doesn't have to do it for the other. So there's some emergency, sort of protections. There's an initial term of 5 years. It renews automatically unless terminated by either party. And the way the lease part of it is going to work is every 2 years, we're going to tally up all the deliveries that each party made. And whichever party delivered more water for the other, the party that received more water will have to pay the party that delivered more water at Broomfield's reuse rate, which comes out to just under $500 per acre foot. So the graph shows just a fictitious illustrative example. If in 1 2-year period, Louisville's deliveries for Broomfield were 60 acre feet, if our deliveries for Louisville were 75, we delivered 15 more acre feet, they would have to pay us at that $492 per acre foot for a little over $7,000. Next slide. Okay, this one's a little more complicated. So the map on the right shows the Anthem ponds that we're talking about. They're all the series of ponds that are just east of Lowell Boulevard. Eventually that stream crosses under Lowell Boulevard, goes to the other 2 ponds just near Highway 7, and then crosses over into the Erie property and Erie Airport. Those ponds also cause depletions to Cold Creek that Louisville was concerned about. So essentially they impound water when we don't have a water right and we're not in priority to impound and store that water. We own those ponds, so we were able to definitively determine that each of those parcels and those ponds are owned by the city and county of Broomfield. They're not decreed under state water law. So as part of the negotiations with Louisville, we agreed that we would address those ponds by 2030, either through what's known as a substitute water supply plan. It's essentially like a mini temporary decree that the state allows you to do, or eventually we would apply in state water court to get a full decree. Either solution, whether we do the substitute water supply plan or eventually the decree, the main impact to us is it's going to cause us to have to start making up those depletions to Cold Creek on a regular basis. So basically we're going to have to release more water to the creek and make the creek whole and protect other water rights holders. So let me see if I remember some of the questions now that I don't have my notes. So I think there was some questions about why weren't the ponds decreed originally when they were developed? To be quite frank, I haven't seen any records about how decisions were made about those ponds at the time. I think when Anthem was developed, I don't know if any of those decisions or those records were kept about decreeing the ponds. I will say that the state generally was just not decreeing ponds like that until recent years. So when you drive around this region, you'll see dozens, if not hundreds of these small retention permanent ponds, and the vast majority of them are not decreed. It's something that the state is increasingly requiring as ponds come into their orbit one way or another through some other water law process. So increasingly we are starting to decree these ponds, but many of them are still outstanding. We do work closely with planning and engineering to try to identify when there are new water features coming in with a new development. So we don't want to be in this situation again where we've got these ponds that suddenly get tangled up in another case. So a good example was mentioned earlier, Wild Pond in the Dillon Point development. It was historically a pond, but it was reconstructed and improved in one manner or another. We did include that in our Marshall case. So it's in the decree and we can legally store water in that pond, and we would do that in future developments similarly. I don't have my notes. I'm forgetting the third question, but if it occurs to me later, I will try to remember.
Whoever asked it, did you want to jog?
I think that actually covered both of the questions.
Okay.
So thank you.
Oh, good. All right. I'm glad.
Lori?
Good. Poor computer. Next slide, please. So the bottom line impact for Broomfield, one, I just want to reiterate that this IGA would give us that ability to meet our year-round obligations to the stream that the decree requires, that our agreement with Louisville requires. And it is critical that it helped us settle that Marshall case without a trial. You never really know what you're going to get out of a water court trial. So we were very happy to be able to settle all these issues and know exactly what we were going to get and not have to worry about what a trial process would result in. We expect minimal financial impact because Broomfield has multiple ways to meet our obligation to Cold Creek. So I mentioned we have Community Ditch, Sienna. We'll have this IGA, and in the future, if and when Broomfield Reservoir is built, we'll have that option for making releases to Cold Creek as well. So I think, and Louisville has more limited options for meeting their obligations on Big Dry Creek. So I think they'll rely on this IGA more than we will. I think that in some years, it'll actually generate revenue for Broomfield when Louisville relies on it more. In some years, it may have some costs. We propose $20,000 a year in our water enterprise budget to cover potential costs associated with this IGA, as well as with some other similar lease agreements that we already have in place. And then in terms of future costs, the fact that we will have to address these Anthem ponds, we agreed to do it by 2030. If we decide to start with a substitute water supply plan, which carries some of its own complications, I think that'll be $5,000 to $10,000 a year for the first couple of years when we need more legal and engineering support, and then it'll reduce after that. And then the process to get a decree for those ponds, I believe would be $300,000 or more. The process to get the Marshall decree was about 1.2 million. I think this one would be substantially less complicated, but would still require a lot of engineering and legal support to go through that process. And it really would just depend on the complexity of the issues raised by opposers that would certainly get into that case. Slide. Okay, resolution 2025-14 would approve the IGA with Louisville for leases of fully consumable water. It would authorize the mayor pro tem to sign in the office of the city county clerk to attest the IGA and form approved by the city county attorney. That's my presentation, and I can answer questions if there are questions.
Thank you very much. We'll now proceed with public comments. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please make your way to the podium. Do we have anyone online? All right, we'll move to questions from council next. Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you talk a little bit more about the Anthem ponds? What would need to be done to get the certification or whatever it's called? What? The decree, thank you. To get the decree, and is there, and would the water release come from the Sienna Reservoir through there or from some other source?
So I'll answer that part first because it's a little simpler. So making up the water depletions that those ponds cause would be the same sources that we do for Sienna. So it'd either be releases from Sienna, from Community Ditch, this IGA, or Broomfield Reservoir in the future. The first part.
When's the Broomfield register? When is that one supposed to be built?
Have that in our CIP for 2037 to be completed.
30.
Completed and operational by 2037.
37, thank
So a
you.
little ways
Okay,
away.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Please go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So the process to get the decree is similar to what we went through the Marshall case, a lot simpler. We would have to submit an application formally in water court. There would be a comment period for opposers to enter the case and say that they're going to oppose. Doesn't mean they're going to oppose outright, but they get to, offer technical questions and suggest conditions that ought to be placed on the decree. We would use our counsel and engineer, outside counsel and engineers to support us through that. So they would do analysis on how big are the ponds, how much water they impound during certain rainstorm events. So we could kind of quantify just how much the depletions are. All that would be shared publicly with the opposers. And then slowly you work your way through what's either called a referee process or eventually with a judge. If you reach settlement with all the opposers, then you all agree on what a decree will say and all of the conditions about how you're going to replace depletions from those ponds, and then you get a decree. That's obviously a wildly fast summary of a complicated process. I would guess for this one, 2 years to 3 years of actual time from application to completion.
Would there be any expectation that there'd have to be any engineering to those ponds, any changes to the ponds? It's just a matter of really accounting for the water flow and retention that those ponds create. Okay.
It would be up to us. So if there was a very advantageous reason to do some engineering on those ponds, maybe if we wanted to be able to make a controlled release from the lower pond or something like that, that might be worth the investment, but I bet not, just in the scale and size of these ponds. So it's mostly just quantifying what they do to the stream and making up for those depletions.
Fine, thank you, appreciate it.
Did we anticipate that this objection might be raised when we started the case in the Marshall shares? With the Marshall shares?
I don't believe we anticipated this. I mean, we knew there were going to be depletions to Coal Creek, just because Sienna is tributary, it flows into that stream that is tributary to Coal Creek. So we knew there were going to be objections related to potential depletions and injury to water rights on Coal Creek. I don't know that we knew that the specific issue around these Anthem ponds was going to be raised. I don't see any records of that. I wasn't involved at the time, but I've looked at all of the records and all of our studies leading up to this, and I don't see anything raising that before. It's the stuff with these ponds is kind of new. Like cities are starting to force other cities to decree these ponds through these kinds of agreements and through these cases. So I think this is a little bit of an emerging issue through water court processes.
Okay. So if we choose the process of decreeing the ponds, as seems wise to me anyway, in my opinion, to go through that process rather than the other process, which you said has its drawbacks and is more temporary. So that's going to take a length of time, as you described to Councilmember Leslie, of 2 to 3 years. Is there any possibility that there would be objections raised? The state would, preempt usage of the ponds or anything like that because they weren't decreed properly to have that flow through them?
No, there wouldn't be anything like that. I mean, I think we have a requirement in the decree. So it is actually in our decree for the Marshall case to address the Anthem ponds by 2030. And then it's also in our legally binding agreement or stipulation, I should say, with Louisville. That was part of the decree process. So we do need to address them by 2030. If by 2030 we did nothing, we would not be in compliance with the decree. And the state might start to say you need to limit the way you use Sienna Reservoir, but I think that would be highly likely. They would just continue to cajole us to get a substitute water supply plan in place, start making augmentation, and then get a decree process started.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So just one quick question. Do we have to bring this IGA back to the water court to finalize the settlement with this? And is there a risk that they would reject this IGA?
We do not. The stipulation was sufficient for the water court process. So it's literally a document that says Broomfield and Louisville or any applicant and any opposer have reached an agreement on their issues and that Louisville is satisfied that that Broomfield is addressing their issues, sufficiently. So all we have to do is have it approved both by Louisville and Broomfield, and that's it. Doesn't have to go back to water court.
Okay, thank you for that. So in the memo, it talked about the statewide water supply plan. I assume that was a typo and it was actually the substitute water supply plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be.
Okay, I just wanted to, I was looking for, when you were doing your presentation, looking for that statewide water supply plan, and I didn't see it. And so all of a sudden I started wondering.
Apologies
So
about that, yeah.
no, I now make that connection. So my last question is regarding those financial considerations. So it seems like that what you said is that Broomfield has more tools to meet this IGA than perhaps the city of Louisville does. So there's potential for revenue. I of course go to my very conservative side and say, perhaps there's a point at which that doesn't happen and Broomfield could be paying out to Louisville instead. So is there a potential for a cap so that either city of Louisville or Broomfield is not shell shocked by the amount, by the difference, or is that something that is not as big of a concern?
The main cap is the 150 acre foot cap on deliveries by either party in I honestly forget at this point if it's any 1 year period or any 2 year period. So the absolute maximum would be if one party delivered the max allowed and the other party delivered nothing, then there would be a payment for that 150 acre feet. So that would be the cap. There is no cap, any further cap than that. I do expect that they would be using, they have Marshall shares that they've changed. They're eager to use them more. They have obligations to Big Dry Creek. So I do expect that they'll be relying on this IGA fairly regularly. I don't know to what extent at this point.
Okay, all righty. Thank you for those.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. The rate at which we pay is based on our current reuse rate of $492 and some odd cents, correct? Does this IGA either permit a inflation adjustment or cost adjustment either per year or per renewal, or is it fixed to that 492 something cents?
That's a great question. I meant to mention that earlier and I didn't. So it's going to change anytime Broomfield changes its reuse rate. So anytime council elects to change the reuse rates within our system, we'll provide notice to Louisville and that acre foot level rate will change with it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, there actually was one final question in there. There was a third question. Okay, so as we go through this decree process for the Anthem ponds and like each pond kind of cascades down to the next pond as it makes its way down, this is all just about ensuring that we're fulfilling those water rights and there is no concern that those ponds would no longer be filled. That has nothing to do with it. Those ponds will continue to operate as they do now, and it's more just about decreeing the water, right?
Correct. Yeah, we would apply as though we wanted to keep those ponds as they are now, as much water as they store, and we would just make up the depletions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. And that was all my questions.
Resolution number 2025-14. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Proposed resolution number 2025-14 to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Louisville for leases of fully consumable water to each other.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Leslie?
I move the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Council, please cast your vote electronically. All council members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. Thank you all so much for your work on this. There are no mayor or council member requests for future action this evening. Is there any other business to come before the council from my colleagues or staff? There being no further business, this business meeting is adjourned.